Alright, here we are another night where there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to look up to. All the great podcast themes have been turned into podcast theme parks, and I don't know about you, but...
Hello, baby, I've been waiting for a Christian Slater podcast.
Welcome back to the Christian Slater Monitor. I'm your host, Oswald Ramirez. You can call me Ozzy, and I'm here with True Blue Catch.
Reno, Carson.
Yes, and we're going to talk about the year 2000's would-be hit, but wasn't a hit, the Monica Lewinsky-themed movie, The Contender. When did you hear about this movie?
I had never heard of this movie, actually.
Really?
It's weird, yeah, because when it came out, it was probably the first year I was in middle school, I guess. I wasn't super young. But yeah, I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, this movie has a big cast. It's with Gary Oldman, Joan Allen as the lead. Then Jeff Bridges, Christian Slater, and Sam Elliott and Saul Rubinek.
I actually just until you mentioned
William Peterson.
I forgot that Christian Slater stuff. I was oh yeah, this is a Christian Slater podcast.
He's not center stage, even though he was mentioned in every trailer, and the poster I found for it has his name first. But then I saw that's the exception, not the rule.
Especially because I think this came out in the year 2000, which seems kind of past his heyday a little bit too.
I don't know. I think that they wanted to maybe spread the blame on this one in case it wasn't a hit. I think that this movie, it was co-produced by Gary Oldman and his business partner Douglas Urbanski, who we'll see in the movie eventually. Then I got picked up by DreamWorks and heavily re-edited. Did you read anything about this?
I did, and I was not surprised to see that it was heavily re-edited. It kind of has that vibe. The ending of the movie has a very different feeling than the rest of the movie for sure.
It's a very weird movie. I saw this movie at the theater because I really liked Gary Oldman and Christian Slater, and I was into Jeff Bridges because this came out maybe more than 2 years altogether. I forget the exact release dates, but it was when The Big Lebowski was fresh in people's minds, which didn't do well at the theater, but I really liked it at the theater, and then it was starting to get a cult following going when this movie came out, and it reunited Sam Elliott and Jeff Bridges from that picture, and reunites Christian Slater with Jeff Bridges from Tucker, A Man in His Dream, and I think Joan Allen might be in Tucker too, but I haven't seen it in so long. Reunites with a lot of people. Gary Oldman from Murder in the First and True Romance, and Saul Rubinek from True Romance.
Well, what did you think of this movie?
In its day, I thought it felt like a weird incomplete movie.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I can't find in looking up stuff on the movie that I didn't come across even on its IMDb trivia or anything is the main thing I remember when this movie came out wasn't that people were complaining about it being re-edited, which I guess they were. People were complaining that maybe it was plagiarized, that the screenplay had been plagiarized by Rod Lurie and he didn't really write it. And I have a little inside gossip that from someone that worked on this movie that says it was plagiarized.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess that what people say happened, is that DreamWorks liked the movie and they wanted to re-edit it because it tested poorly in test screenings, and allegedly because the people behind DreamWorks are really liberal, and the movie they wanted to give it more of a more feminist liberal slant than the real movie.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
I visited my parents and I saw a good Matt Dillon movie. We were talking about Matt Dillon last time we talked, and I saw one called The Big Town where he plays an awesome craps player.
I love Matt Dillon because, he reminds me of my ex-boyfriend. I never really had a crush on Matt Dillon. It's weird. I never really had a crush on Matt Dillon in my life.
You should.
And I dated this guy who looked like Matt Dillon, and now I have a crush on Matt Dillon.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite for me. If I date someone, I don't know, maybe not, because I used to really, really, really have a thing for women that looked a certain type of way. Then I dated one for 4 years, and now it's I still like them, but it's not as much of oh man, as it was. And I don't know why that is. But then I guess with other people, sometimes I wouldn't consider a certain type of person attractive really. Then I date one that I thought was, and then afterwards it would open up a whole new world of thinking that kind of person is attractive. You're right.
It's weird because this guy, I don't know, like at the time, I don't know, he's like someone that I knew like most of my life. The interesting thing is like he actually got me kicked out of school when I was a kid, and we wound up dating like as adults. And he's definitely not like, I don't know, I guess maybe you could argue this is the typical kind of person I would date. But like I feel like everyone always thinks that I would date like arty, like filmy music people, but like no, typically not. I date like cops and military people and stuff.
Math teacher once, as I recall.
I think an English teacher.
Oh, I thought he was a math teacher.
But he was a real dummy. I was like, this guy shouldn't be teaching English. Like he texted all fucked up. Really sad. But he like was the type of guy, he was always have this thing when I was dating him where I thought he was dumb and stuff, and he would always be like, you think I'm a mouth breather and you think I'm like a neck beard and stuff, and I like didn't think that he was smart. He was really like good at math. He was an engineer. I didn't think he was stupid, but it was like a turn off that he thought that I thought he was stupid, you know, like that he kept bringing it up all the time and stuff.
Yeah, something like that can really be annoying if somebody always brings it up.
But like in retrospect, like when I think of him, he's like the most attractive guy I ever dated. Like I didn't really feel like that at the time necessarily, but I feel like that in retrospect. Like I should have just gotten married to him when I was like 28 probably.
Whoa.
But you live and you learn. I mean, what can you say?
So you were also, that means you were in middle school when the Monica Lewinsky thing happened.
Yeah. It was probably like that was like what, 90, wait, no, was that like 96?
I think it was even beyond that. I think it was closer to 2000 when it all happened. Or
maybe
like
it was
98, 99. It was the latter half of the second term, I think, of Clinton's presidency was wrapped up all with the impeachment stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was in middle school then. Mm-hmm.
I watched a special thing on HBO. I guess they have a series on HBO called How It Really Happened, and it's weird because it must not have been made for HBO because it clearly has commercial breaks, but there are no commercials on HBO. But it was hosted by Hill Harper, who I remember as a basketball player in the movie He Got Game, and I was thinking he should have helped with some of the basketball playing in this movie because Joan Allen we eventually see. Well, we'll get to that. Are you ready to get into the movie?
I'm ready.
All right. To get into the plot,
Begin spoilers.
we start off with an opening title and a car going and a terrible cover of Ring of Fire, known for being performed by Johnny Cash. And it was done by June Carter Cash. And the first thing I thought when you hear this, like, almost like they're trying to hide a background singer, you can just barely hear this guy background singing. I was like, is that Jeff Bridges? And sure enough, I looked it up. It was Jeff Bridges. And then we open with the car drives this lake bridge. And then we have William Peterson from such films as Manhunter and To Live and Die in L.A. and Fear. Did you ever watch, you probably are, you're a girl, all girls really like that movie Fear. I never saw it. Thought about
is that the one with Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
I remember it, like, I feel like this is like many people my age, it's like their like sexual awakening. There's like this finger banging scene like to the Sundays or something on a Ferris wheel. And Mark Wahlberg plays this like psycho who's like every girl's first crush or something. But I was like a real prude as like a young person because I was raised like extremely religious. And like I remember like seeing like rabbits having sex as a kid and I started screaming and crying, you know, like that repressed, that like level.
So you did not enjoy Fear? Did you not even see it?
Oh, no, I did see it. But like for me, that kind of stuff was like, I was not like in that kind of zone where it's like, oh, boys. And like, it was just like scary and creepy to me at the time. Yeah. I wonder what I would think if I saw it now.
Yeah, I thought about watching it and I forgot. Yeah. I watched many other things though, including How It Really Happened, hosted by Bill Hunter. So then we have some really nice shots of this lake or whatever and like a duck congregating. It's called the Apache Way. And I tried to look up, is this a real place? Or is this a made-up place for the movie, do you think? Because I've never heard of it before the movie. And I don't know how they spelled it. I should have looked it up. And then like, I kept looking up spellings of Apache Way and coming up with nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. And this beginning and this like plot line of the movie is like very like overly complicated or something in my opinion. It's very like crazy and like far-fetched and stuff. It's like very...
We're supposed to think that it happened surreptitiously, but it seems so like, if you're at all cynical, it seems so planned that It's crazy. So this car drives the lake to this bridge on the Apache Way, and under this bridge, in what we find out later is a crabbing area, William Peterson is fishing for bass on a boat, and he's being interviewed by a journalist who's asking about models of leadership, like who his model for leadership is, and he picks Anwar Sadat and says why, and then says that he gets asked if there was an issue he would die for, and the guy lists a couple things he's into, which are like woman's freedom to choice and the flat tax, and he likes to think he would die for civil rights. And we find out later on that this was maybe not a good idea to fish right in this area because it's a crabbing area, but also it's with a lot of like things sticking in the ground, like masses in the ground. My sister dates a fisherman, and this movie features the Fisher King. And my sister dates a fisherman, and he says that fish like to gather around like masses in the water. That those are usually really good places to fish rather than out in the middle of nowhere. And sometimes he'll go in a lake and like put poles in the water underwater to try to attract fish to them for when he goes back.
Ooh.
And sometimes he'll go in, if he really knows a place, and there's a fishing tournament there, he'll go in the night before the tournament and put poles in the water, and only he'll know where they are to try to catch fish. That seems like cheating.
There's fishing tournaments?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, our buddy Boz Gravidson, his brother sometimes goes in fishing tournaments.
Wow. I think have I met him before?
I forget.
So.
He goes by the nickname Potato.
I think I've met him.
He's quite a good guy. My sister's boyfriend's a good guy, but he's very, very into fishing, that's for sure. And he's won some of these tournaments, maybe many of them. So we find out William Peterson's into the flat tax. Do you know about the flat tax?
It's something I like vaguely remember being popular during this time.
Yeah,
where,
it was
like,
a hot thing.
every person should just get taxed like 10% or something.
Or like, yeah, the idea is that rich people would get taxed, no matter your tax bracket, you would get taxed the same percentage, and that would be more fair.
Yeah.
And it was like a big thing put forth by the millionaire Steve Forbes, who was a Republican candidate in '96 who didn't make it out of the primaries. I think because he dropped out, maybe got back in or something, kind of a Ross Perot situation. But the flat tax is really evil. It's like it kind of holding it up in this movie like it's a good thing in a way, I think. It seems like Saul Rubinek's not into it. But the flat tax doesn't work because if you get taxed 10%, it hurts you way more than taxing a rich person 10%. Because the rich person's 90% is a lot more money than your 90%. And they can spend their 90% trying to find more loopholes not to pay parts of the 10 than you can.
Yeah. I wonder though, like, I feel like that's true theoretically, but I feel like so many rich people wind up paying like basically no taxes. Like,
well, wouldn't they anyway? They'd figure out loopholes anyway with lawyers they could buy.
I mean, maybe there's no way to really like punish rich people.
Yeah, I think that it was kind of put forth as an idea not to punish rich people for being rich or something, but it seems like a total break in their direction. We do have a flat tax in this country. It's called the sales tax. And we use everybody pays the same sales tax when they buy something. So, and there are probably other flat taxes as well. But we use a complex flat tax system in order to be more fair to everyone. Then the car that we've been seeing driving and is listening, I guess, in the car to that terrible cover of Ring of Fire. It flies off the bridge off the side into the water. And immediately, William Peterson, with no life jacket, he jumps off the boat and dives in to save the person in this car. And it's a woman. And he goes down there and he fails. But my buddy, when I was watching the movie with this guy, and he said if he'd heard this song, he'd just let the lady drown. And that also, because the car is filled with water, she should be able to open the door because the pressure would be equalized. But she cannot open the door, and she does drown. Then we go to a press conference where we find out she died, and he talks about it. And then he goes and meets with the president, Jackson Evans. Which we get, how many crazy names? Is it the crazy names of people in this impress you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird because it's like, what was I watching? I watched so much stuff like over Christmas break, you know?
Yes.
Because that's just a time to like read and watch stuff. So you always wind up having all this. But yeah, like I watched like the morning show or something on Apple TV, and like that also has like a bunch of crazily named people. I think someone maybe also named Jackson or something, but a woman. What president has like a name like that. Like they all have like
pretty normal names.
yeah.
Barack Obama.
Unless I was gonna say with the exception of Barack Obama. But like, yeah, all of them have just like normal, like biblical sort of names.
You know, Jackson Evans was listed as Barack Obama's favorite movie president.
Oh, that does not surprise me. Knowing what I know of Barack Obama, like, of course he would say that.
And Jackson Evans is smoking here, and I wondered if that was the reason, because Barack Obama was a smoker.
I think it's just because it's like liberal fantasy garbage.
He's a real liberal. This movie's a crazy liberal pipe dream president. We'll get more into that as we go along for sure. The current vice president died, and so they're having to replace the vice president, and the list of this guy, Jack Hathaway, played by William L. Peterson. He was number one on a lot of people's list, and they tell him that he's the future of the party and always will be. And they don't need another Chappaquiddick, because the girl died, they aren't going to nominate him. So instead, they're going to go with their number two, or we don't know, probably really their number one. It seemed like they really were just kind of lying to him and didn't want to ever nominate him.
Well, yeah, it's weird because like at face value, like if you accept or don't, like you haven't gotten to like the end of the story yet or whatever. So like it's weird that they would even like compare this to Chappaquiddick or because he's supposed to be just like a random, like this is like a random person that he's supposed to have try to save. It's not someone, it's like that doesn't wind up being the case, obviously. But it's like this is supposedly like a random person that he just tried to save. Like why would he be like penalized for that? Like trying to save a person. Like they died. So I guess it's just like saying like you're a failure because the person died. But
maybe just how coincidental it all seemed. Maybe they smelled a rat that he was there like on a boat with a journalist at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. In this scene though, we get like Jeff Bridges starts his crazy smoke acting in the movie. He's doing it. He like exhales through his nose in one part. Then when he tells him no, that he won't be president, he starts blowing smoke rings at him.
Yeah, he's a weird, it's honestly a weird character. Like, because he seems so like honestly really bumbling or something. Like everyone's like, he's so charming, but it's like, he's actually kind of acts like this idiot who's just like obsessed with eating.
Yes, this is before we get the eating obsession. Does he eat in this scene, or is this the only time maybe he doesn't? Yeah,
that's a good question. I wish I would have gone back and like paid attention to that. But like in every scene, he's just like eating weird food.
It's one of his big. It's doing weird things, smoking and eating it. Like, and you know, we'll explain it here in a minute. But anyway, then like Saul Rubinek shows up to escort William Peterson out. President's like, Jack Hathaway's had a shitty week. Now it's between Malloy and Hanson, and he says it'll be Hanson. And Elliot suggests she's a turncoat who turncoated their way, but he doesn't like turncoats, meaning that Hanson is a woman and she switched from being a Republican to a Democrat. Now, watching the movie, did it seem like she ever would have been a Republican?
Okay, here's my thing, and I think this is like my biggest problem with this movie in general, is that she is just the worst. Like, she's the mom from Pleasantville, and that's like her vibe.
Yeah, she's also, I always think of her as the mom from Searching for Bobby Fischer.
She's like just this like dour woman that like, I don't know, like she's the wrong actress for this role. Like she's not believable like in this character, in this role. She just doesn't have this vibe at all. She doesn't have like, the character itself is not like exceptional or something. The character is really boring to where you're like, why is everyone like, she's an exceptional person, and like she's not at all.
Well, this is crazy. We haven't quite met her yet, but so they say that Rod Lurie came up with the idea for this movie after giving an award to Joan Allen at some festival, and he said that he should write her a movie to win another award for it. She said she'd read a script if he wrote it, and like they insisted on having Joan Allen. They also say the script was ready a couple of weeks after they had that conversation, which I don't know if that is an indication of it being plagiarized or not, the speed it was turned around.
She's like a fine actress and stuff. Like she's just not good in this role or believable in this role. And like, could I see her specifically as like a person who, okay, if I was going to cast like a boring ass, like dour Republican woman from the 90s, like, yeah, I would cast Joan Allen.
Good. I was wondering where you were going with that, but yeah, you're right. She would make a better Liddy Dole.
Yeah, it's like, that's not who this character actually really is. So it's like yes and no, I guess.
Where I was going was that there's reports that that money people maybe wanted Michelle Pfeiffer for the role, and they fought to keep Joan Allen. And I was like,
I love Michelle Pfeiffer.
Me too. At some point in the movie, I was like, is this a much better movie with Michelle Pfeiffer in it?
Yeah.
I think it's at least a little better. Yeah, like the person I know that worked on the movie quoted he used the quote that Dorothy Parker had about Katharine Hepburn, which is that she runs the gamut of emotions from A to B.
Yeah.
Yeah. We never meet the other guy, Malloy, the third choice in the movie, which I did kind of like that. I like when there's something in the movie you never just find out about and is mentioned that gives the movie some kind of thing. And there are a couple of things. And one is what happened at Hartford, and the other is Malloy. We just never meet that guy. Rubenek and Elliot, their job is to help her get confirmed. And then then her phone rings while she and her husband are boning in her office. And either her husband's penis is very flaccid or small, because when he stands up, there's just no indication of a penis right when he pulls out. Like it's just his shirt hanging down and him not wearing pants. It's like, damn, he really went down fast. But anyway, like he's like, the president's on the phone. You want to talk to him? So she has to this is like one of the times to try to make her cool or something. Like, yeah, she straightens up to answer the phone. And our first maybe to kind of throw a red herring for later. So anyway, Hathaway goes home to his wife, Jack Hathaway, and his wife is evil. She's a real Lady Macbeth type, and she balls him out and tells him to call Shelley Runyon to help him fight the choice. Joan Allen's here with her husband, Robin Thomas, who was the vice principal in the movie Summer School with Mark Harmon, and Kirstie Alley, which I used to watch. And then her aide is the guy that plays Leo Crow in Minority Report. It's the only thing I know him from. It's being the guy that's supposed to have molested Tom Cruise's child and then turns out not to have. Then they're driving to the White House, and the Robin Thomas says that Runyon's going to be a problem, and he's in charge of the confirmation hearings. He's a congressman from Illinois, is what we find out at some point. Then they say we should need to go work with him and butter him up. And she's like, let's not work on him. Let's get it on our own merit first, which also sets up a big part of her character. Then they go meet the president, and the president is in the bowling alley bowling, and we see him bowl, which we never saw Jeff Bridges bowl in The Big Lebowski, but here he does. I guess, spoiler, both he and Joan Allen were nominated for Oscars for this film.
Which is funny because, if I was going to pick someone that actually, Sam Elliott's the best performance in this movie if I had to choose.
So I think it's easily Gary Oldman.
Yeah, no, Gary Oldman's good too. I would pick one of them for sure. But I mean, Jeff Bridges I can see why people, I like Jeff Bridges and stuff. And I can see why people would like the character. He's affable or something, but Oscar worthy. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of one note, but he does have a big speech at the end. I guess they said Rod Lurie wrote it for Gregory Peck or Paul Newman. He offered it to both those, and Gregory Peck was right on the retirement edge and was like, no, I'm not coming out for this. And then
when I was in high school, I hung out with this girl who was from LA and claimed that she was Gregory Peck's daughter and stuff, and her mom was this crazy woman, and she was the illegitimate daughter of Gregory Peck or something. Yeah, true or not, I don't know, but
he's one of those actors I like more and more, and as I age and watch more old movies, I'm like, oh yeah, Gregory Peck's pretty good. Are you a bowler?
I mean, I'll go bowling. You know what I mean? If that's what he wants to do. And I'm a very competitive person, so I like doing anything that's competitive. I just think it's fun. I'm not competitive in that way where it's if I lose, I'm mad or something. I just think competing is fun.
I'm exactly the same. I'm I like shooting pool more than bowling. Bowling for me, it's the first game we play, I'll try really hard. But then after that, I'll lose focus and just kind of be socializing, and my competitive spirit in bowling goes down a lot after one game. But
yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's a fun thing to do with other people. It's a fun place, and you can wear cute little outfits and drink, and I don't know if you can.
And I like the noises, much like with shooting pool. I like the bowling noises, the sound of it rolling and the pins hitting and all that.
Pool is something I actually get bored of pretty fast. I usually can't play a full game of pool before losing interest in it.
Well, I get way into that. I'm not even good at it, but I just really like it. I like the lights above the tables and the colors of the felt, and then the noises and the balls. Yeah, it's a lot like bowling. They're both very there's a lot of sound pleasure and visual weirdness to them. Those are cool games. Anyway, this is where we get he says his average is 150, and he's trying to beat his average. And this is where he tells them about where he saw a movie where the president president could order any kind of food, could get any food he wants. And he says it turns out this is the perk of the century. And we start getting the theme of him like always ordering food. And his idea is that he wants to try to stump the White House kitchen and catch them one time where they don't have the food, can't get him the food. I couldn't find what movie it was that he would have seen where this happened. I don't know the answer. Maybe somebody can hit us up if they just remember it.
I don't either. I've heard that about like the Playboy Mansion.
Whoa.
I'm sure it's probably true also of the White House or something, but also what a freak. Like,
yes. What a weird thing to try to do. Like, you know, like I'm gonna bust what a good way to make your staff hate you.
Yeah, he should have been fatter. I think this character should have been played by like a big fat guy.
Oh yeah, you're right. Here we find out that also that Jack Hathaway and Shelley Runyon have been friends for years, even though they're very far apart politically, we find out. Lane Hansen fears Shelley Runyon, but Evans does not. So here we have where the press meets in the cabinet room after this, where Jackson Evans is going to come in and tell everybody who the vice presidential candidate is. And everybody's expecting Malloy because Hathaway's already said he chose to step down. And Rubenek's the one that sets up the press conference and of introducing the press, and he really has fun talking to the press in this scene. He acts it up. He does not hold back. And then the president says Lane Billings Hansen is his choice. And Leo Crow's creeping around in the background of Hansen's shot on TV. Then Sam Elliott, he tells Robin Thomas that he needs to be scarce so he doesn't look like he's Lane's puppeteer, because a husband that's always behind his wife, I guess he thinks will look like he's pulling the strings. And the FBI is going to run an investigation on Hansen for her confirmation. It'll be an in-depth investigation. And then Lane Hansen's on Larry King. Cheyenne, Wyoming. What's that?
Wouldn't they do that like before, like announcing that she was the choice of the vice president?
You would think so.
Wouldn't she be like vetted like prior to being announced as the choice? Like,
yeah, I would definitely think so. And Cheyenne then asks the caller from Cheyenne on Larry King asks Lane Hansen what her model for being in office would be. She does not pick Anwar Sadat. She picks Thomas Jefferson. And then it turns out that Sam Elliott plays a guy named Kermit, and he and Saul Rubinek go and visit Shelley Runyon, and this is where he first meets Shelley Runyon, who is Gary Oldman in glasses and like.
And in my opinion, Gary Oldman is actually like the moral center of this movie. Like he's like a more like moral character than like Joan Allen's.
That's the one thing is like they give him, and that runs throughout the film. And that he pointed out, I guess, in post things of like kind of where he thought the movie was supposed to be, like, is that he wasn't supposed to be, I guess, originally such a villain. And one of the things they did give him is that throughout the movie, he is the guy that, well, she also sticks to her guns, but he has like, he really believes in things, even if you don't believe what he believes in.
It's just like, I think that like the point of politics is just to be like, this is not like a point that we've really gotten to yet in this movie, but it's like the point of politics, in my opinion, is that it's not about being like principled or something. It's about being like the most like Machiavellian person that you can be. Like that's, if you truly have principles and you truly want to change things and like accomplish things, you have to be like extremely Machiavellian. Like you have to be able to like backstab anyone, do anything, say anything. Like I feel like that's the thing I hate the most about this movie. Like I don't like the idea that like you can succeed by like being principled. That's like a liberal pipe dream. And like I kept wondering when I was watching this, like what this movie would be if you made it 20 years later. Because there's no way you could have the same like view of politics that you had 20 years ago. Like this movie could not, you just couldn't have this vision going through the last 20 years.
I don't know, yeah, and then clearly Shelley Runyon is meant to kind of remind us of Ken Starr, and throughout this, Shelley Runyon blindsides people with stuff or like does all this stuff, but in reality, Ken Starr told the president he knew everything about the affair and everything, and told the president he shouldn't lie to him because he knew, but then the president, he did it anyway. So like, or at least at first. And Runyon, like we said, he's from Illinois. And I guess he's based on a guy named Henry Hyde that was an Illinois congressman that was really against abortion and had like an abortion bill named after him at some point. A big pro-lifer. We find out later Runyon's a big pro-lifer. But
and we haven't gotten to this point yet either, but like his wife is like the most evil character.
Yes, right? Like, that's a divorce that needs to happen now. She also seems crazy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, like he needs to ditch his wife. Yeah, so does he and Jack Hathaway, two best buds with terrible wives. And is Jackson Evans married? We never meet his wife. There's no first lady in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think it talks about it. So maybe not.
So Runyon tells them, so he says that he served with Hanson for years because they were both congressmen, or she was a senator, I believe, and he's a congressman from the Republican Party. And now they're in different companies. And Runyon says he won't confirm her just because she's a woman. And he says she's not super qualified. Then Elliot leaves on a call from the president, which is where a lot of the trouble in the movie starts, is Sam Elliott getting this call from Jackson Evans and then stepping outside, because this leaves Salt Rubinek with Runyon, and Runyon hassles Rubinek to say who the second choice was, and he says Hathaway eventually, which is Oldman's old buddy. And he's like, for a Democrat, I love him. And which is another thing about Oldman's character being pretty principled, is that he has this friendship with Jack Hathaway, even though they're far apart on the issues. Sam Elliott comes back and asks for fairness. He says, can I ask you for fairness? And Runyon's like, of course you can ask for it. And what he wants is balanced Republicans and Democrats at the hearings. And here we go to the Capitol. And I guess this is where we meet Christian Slater. And he meets Oldman on the steps of the Capitol and introduces himself as Reginald Webster, Reg Webster, junior congressman, Democrat from Delaware. And he asks to be put on the committee, which I guess is the Judiciary Committee, in spite of being junior member. And we get our second reference to Runyon having a poker game, which I guess the predecessor of Slater played in. And all this poker stuff, I think, kind of like, this is before the big poker boom on TV, I believe. Maybe around the same time the movie Rounders came out, maybe a little before. And I think it may be like a reference to how much Nixon loved poker. And apparently Nixon was a good poker player. And he asks Slater what his predisposition is to confirming Lane Hanson. He says he's 100% objective, and Runyon says go to his dictionary and cross out objective from the dictionary. And I was thinking like Webster's Dictionary, because his name is Webster in the movie. And his constituents want him for his subjectivity. And so he's going to do that. And she goes now to her father, who is playing tennis and played by Philip Baker Hall. And she's complaining that he's been quiet about supporting her. And Philip Baker Hall's really pissed about her son saying that baby Jesus created topspin because his kindergarten teacher told it to him. And Philip Baker Hall's like, I worked so hard to strike that nonsense out of public schools. And she's like, well, maybe you should put him in a public school. But then it turns out, I don't think this is ever, well, he says he has to love at least one Democrat in this scene. So we find out he's a Republican, but once again, it's like he's a Republican who's super anti Christianity in schools. It's like, who are this guy's constituents?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like theoretically, like, I don't know. I mean, theoretically, like Republicans should be against like religion in school.
I mean, my mom is a Christian Republican who's against religion in schools.
So maybe like, I don't know. This is kind of I feel like when all of the Christian stuff came in to like where you kind of have it now, like that was like George W. Bush. And this is obviously like right at that time or something. But this movie was probably like written like a little before that if it came out in 2000. So like, I don't know. I feel like politics, like the political landscape was like a little bit different back then. I don't know that like it was so like Republicans were so like hyper Christian until like post George W. Bush kind of. But
yeah, that was the thing where Bush went more to the Christian coalition and all that for monetary and publicity than previous candidates have been, including his father, had been willing to. So she says he's been quiet about supporting her, and some reporters are saying that like maybe he doesn't support her, and he's like, I promised when I left office I would never talk to the press again, but I know this one guy at the Times I once leaked some stuff about Pat Buchanan to, which Pat Buchanan was a symbol for like evil Republican, but also you get like that the Republican guy leaked stuff, so it's like once again the Republicans are kind of a nest of Machiavellian vipers, and that the liberals the Democrats are, like not doing all these things. And she quotes Ben Franklin about the vice presidency being superfluous, which is one of her many lame lines. Like, in defense of her
She's
being nominated
so
for the
lame.
Oscar, like women's roles around the year 2000, I remember every year for the Oscars, it was like when you would see like what should be nominated for Best Actress, there just weren't that many good parts in comparison to how some years today, it's like there are a lot better parts for women, I feel like, most years than there were then.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
Like, I remember every year, like I don't watch the Oscars as much now, but yeah, I would look at the nominees and just be like, well, who would they nominate? So this was supposed to be like a big subplot that we never see Philip Baker Hall again in the movie after this. Did you read about this?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so this is one of the things that was cut was that he apparently was a corrupt governor, and he used illegal means to get her campaign funding and get her elected. And it came out later in the movie. And I guess that DreamWorks or someone felt that the audience would not be into her confirmation after that it swung things too far in the other way, and that her character as a hero and model of leadership didn't recover. So he's just like out of the movie at this point. This was a big time for Philip Baker Hall. He had just been this is the year after Magnolia. This is kind of a Philip Baker Hall-isance where he was on Seinfeld. It all stems from Paul Thomas Anderson putting him in the movie Hard Eight, and then he put him in Boogie Nights and Magnolia. He was also in the Psycho movie. But I guess like the big thing of Philip Baker Hall was that in the 80s, maybe even the early 80s, I forget when, he was in a TV movie based on a one-man play that he was probably into, where he played Richard Nixon, that was directed by Robert Altman. And then he just kind of faded away, and much like Quentin Tarantino does with actors, Paul Thomas Anderson just always remembered liking Philip Baker Hall, and it really led kind of a big character actor.
Me and my best friend are so obsessed with like the Psycho remake, because it's like,
I kind of like it.
That's the weirdest movie to me, where it's like Gus Van Sant was like, I want to remake this movie like shot for shot, but just add like one scene of him like jerking off. That's the only thing.
I was like, I don't think what's funny is that it's not shot for shot. It's almost shot for shot.
Yeah, that's like just the funniest thing to me. But anyway.
Yeah, I kind of like the Psycho remake. It has a great cast. I like the old Psycho too.
I need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but
it doesn't all work, but I still like it better than a lot of movies. Like, there's somewhere Quentin Tarantino was saying that he doesn't really like the movie Psycho, and he was talking about some other movie he likes a lot more, and I was like, man, I totally disagree. The old Psycho movie and even the remake, I like them both quite a bit.
I rewatched old Psycho not that long ago, and it's good. It holds up.
Yeah, it's fun. I just like the girl dying and how long the movie goes before she dies, and it's like a film noir that turns into a horror movie. It's just fun.
Yeah, I think it's a fun movie too.
Christian Slater goes back to Gary Oldman, and Gary Oldman is sitting out a b-ball game that we are supposed to believe he just played in, and he refs it, and then says he calls a foul on someone, then says you can't trust those fucking people. And when they show the basketball game, is he talking about the black players, or is he talking about something else? Is he being racist here, or is he just like, I don't know. They don't explain it. But anyway, how good of a basketball player do you figure you figure even Gary Oldman is? He doesn't look like much of an athlete to me.
I can't imagine that he's good at basketball. I feel like basketball, though, is like a thing like politicians seem to like love to do.
Sure. It is a very politician-y sport. But I don't figure him as a good basketball player. And also this is one thing that was debated, is that Gary Oldman saw his character as a Jewish Republican, and Jewish people really like basketball. They also really like baseball. They probably like most sports.
I'm like a baseball person. That I got into baseball like weirdly as an adult, but like I have never really been that into basketball. But I played basketball when I was a kid because I'm tall.
I love playing basketball, probably also because I'm tall. But
that was the sport I was the best at out of all the ones I played, definitely, as a kid. It's a fun one.
I loved baseball the most as a kid. As an adult, I definitely watch basketball the most and still partake in it. The reason I was talking about mentioning Jewish people love baseball is like there's a park in West Hollywood. There's a big Jewish community, and I'm like, what is it? The Orthodox Jews, and you can walk by or drive by these baseball parks, and like all these kids and teenagers, all these Orthodox Jewish teenagers play baseball together, and they have they have to wear button down white shirts and slacks and shit or whatever. They have all and their yarmulkes. They have to still dress in appropriate fashion for their religion, and it's just very adorable. Like, it really makes you feel good. You're like, man, this is like cool as fuck. Slater goes to this basketball game at the Y or something, some gym, and Oldman turns down Slater because Slater, but then for being on the committee, but then Slater tells him he's not into Hanson. He's more of a Hathaway man, and so Oldman then takes him on. He says that Joan Allen's views are more suited to being across the aisle from whence she came. So he's saying she's more of a Republican still. And then Oldman asks if he can count on Slater's discretion. He says yes, for him to be discreet, rather. And Oldman then meets William Peterson, and it tells him that the drowning girl excuse was just an excuse, which that it's all because Jackson Evans wants a lady, but it wouldn't be Barbara Boxer or Joan or Winslet. I don't know who Joan or Winslet are, but Boxer I recognize as Barbara Boxer. They say she's not too far to the left. That was another thing. Her being moderate kind of helps, which she seems very far to the left. I guess the only thing like that throughout the film what makes her seem at all right wing is that she's pro military spending.
I just think it's just like the way she looks and her vibe is just like a dusty like.
But we find out we've already seen her fucking in her office with her husband, like Donnie.
But like she would never be fucking her husband in her office. Like that's just not. I'm sorry. Like you're trying to make her seem like that's like setting up. That's just setting up what happens like later in the script to like kind of portray her as like a certain type of person. But it's like once again like the wrong actress. Like she does not fit this vibe at all.
She's totally miscast here as a sex pot, which we find out like other times that she's very into sex.
And people are like, she's the hot or something. It's like, it's weird. I was looking at her in this movie and I'm like, she has like really good bone structure and like, I can't figure out, like, she's just not hot. Like, I'm not saying she's not like sort of pretty or something, but like a sex pot or hot or like, it's shocking. Like, do you know any man that's like Joan Allen?
No, I'm certainly not one of those men.
I
do like her in some movies, but in this movie, I did not care for her performance. I thought she was pretty bad.
I didn't dislike her per se as an actress, but she's not like charismatic or sexy or something.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of charisma, no. And then this part really needs it because it is kind of a poorly written part. It's like it needs someone to really get you to love it.
Yeah, that like has their own like charisma for sure. And she's not that person.
Someone perhaps like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Mm-hmm.
So Hathaway doesn't want to go after Lane Hanson and try to discredit her. But from the shadows, we see this man named Makarowitz. He says they need to make her wade in her own blood. And he's like some rich guy who's going to fund his own private investigation. He says the FBI won't find anything. All her money is tied up in blind trust funds. And even if they do, those improprieties, Shelley Runyon says, would only help her because the public would be relieved to know a woman was as ruthless as the rest of us. And then this Makarowitz guy asks if Hathaway has ever stabbed a man in the navel. And we know that Hathaway was in Desert Storm. And he asks if Slater has stabbed a man in the navel. And Slater's like, no, can't say that I have. He's like, the bleeding is so severe and swift, it wouldn't matter if Jesus himself put his healing hand on the wound. The bastard is dead. We have to gut the bitch in the belly.
It's also unclear to me, like, why they're so, like, against her as a choice. Like, I don't really understand that either, because it's like, wouldn't you, like...
want someone closer to your beliefs?
Yeah, wouldn't you want the most conservative person? Or, like, it's just really weird.
What they bring up, I guess, is that Oldman has a grudge against Bridges from something that happened in Hartford, where maybe at some point Oldman was maybe going to be on the track to the presidency and something went awry. We never find out any of the details of this. That's the other big thing we don't find out about.
I guess it doesn't matter ultimately, but
it kind of matters to the plot of the movie. Did you recognize at all this actor who plays Makarowitz only in this scene? He never pops up again. I
hardly even remember him, except for he's just like a shady guy who like comes in with a folder.
Yeah, this is the business partner of Gary Oldman, Douglas Urbanski, and one of the producers of the film, and he acts in very few movies. I watched him do a voice in he's like there's a Czech. I watched a crazy movie last night. I watched this movie that was called Toys in the Attic, and it's a Czech animation movie that is fucking creepy as fuck. It's like Toy Story except for Eastern Bloc crazy from 2009, and he does one of the American voices. He's the villain in it, and and he's the president of Harvard in the movie The Social Network.
I do kind of remember that, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably his most famous role. But he's only in, he's not in very many movies, but he's usually actually pretty good. Like, in this movie, he didn't have much to do. He's just in this one scene. But in other movies, he's really good, but he doesn't act much. He mostly just produces movies Gary Oldman's in, and once in a while, one he's not. So at any rate, he tells them, make no mistake, that we're going to obliterate this woman's life, but they will get you the vice presidency. So this is where we have it. They're going to do whatever they have to do. And now this is where we find out about the pictures of Lainey Hanson in college, apparently getting gangbanged, though you can't see her face in any of the pictures, which is like another clue that maybe something's amiss here. Were you immediately struck by how you never see her face in any of, like, they have old footage too. Like, we see old footage and her face is blocked in that of this topless woman walking.
Yes, and another thing I kept thinking about this was like, well, I won't say this till later. I'll talk about this later.
Okay. Then we move to a cafe and some kind of Virginia Beltway cafe. And I was reading the sign on the wall of this cafe, or on the door, that's written on the inside that says they have a gentleman's night out every Wednesday. They have Monday night football steak dinners. And then this is where Leo Crow meets with a dude who has this massive rib lunch. It's like 50 fucking plates of lunch. Did you see this?
I don't remember. No, which is weird because I noted a lot of things about food in this movie, but I don't really remember that.
Yeah, I think I gained 20 pounds over the several times I watched this movie just because it kept making me want to eat and smoke. And this guy, he gives Leo Crow a folder and tells him not to tell anyone where he got it from. This is Runyon's work, and this is where the guy sees the folder and finds out that they're gonna they have this sex stuff, and he's like, this is shit. And it's what it is it's I don't know if the pictures are in there, maybe they are, but it's the transcripts from a deposition that Shelley Runyon's been conducting with people that went to Harvard with Lane Hanson, I guess. And there's this, we do a flashback here. And this is one of the times I was really thinking about the cinematography of the movie, because this is done, I think, in black and white or some kind of weird color. There's the person typing and shit. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this movie really wants to look like JFK. Or like an Oliver Stone movie, like Nixon and JFK. There's a real cut rate, Robert Richardson vibe to all the film in this. Did you think this movie was a nice looking movie or not?
Well, it's funny because I talked about this, but I watched talk radio
oh yeah, which is a Robert Richardson, Oliver Stone
at the same time. I watched it I can't remember if it was right before or right after this, but I was telling you, I kind of wish that I hadn't watched them back to back, because that's I don't know. It gave me this weird basis for comparison. And yeah, this definitely reminded me of something that was trying to be an Oliver Stone movie. Visually, I think it was just uninteresting. I don't know.
I think maybe the best looking stuff is the duck on the water and stuff. I think that the movie sometimes looks really cheap. And I wonder if it's because maybe it is kind of a cheap movie that just has a trillion scenes. And maybe they just didn't have a lot of time in a lot of these locations.
It doesn't look bad or anything. It's not like you watch it and you think, oh, this looks horrible, or it's just unremarkable, I guess is the word I would use.
Fair. Yeah, so we get this flashback to the deposition, and there's a very heavyset lady named Lava Mir, and I was thinking this is their version of Linda Tripp, and she's talking about how Lane Hanson put on a 3 or 4 hour sex show, 3 hours.
I definitely remember thinking that she was Linda Tripp too.
And then after she had sex with 2 guys in front of everyone, she was carried into another room, and men kept coming, or frat boys kept coming in and out, and she emerged just covered in cum.
I mean, anytime someone's talking about a gangbang, it's always a hoax. Does anyone get gangbanged in real life? That's not a thing. It's in porn, and it doesn't happen in real life, under any circumstances. That's just my personal opinion.
I think weird, not weird, I think there are swinger groups and stuff that have gangbangs and things, but it's always really pre-planned, and probably people you don't want to see being in a gangbang, if I had to guess.
That's the only, I always go in Austin to a nude beach, and it's of course the vast majority of people that you ever see at a nude beach are people that shouldn't be at a nude beach. Just the only people who want to do debauched sex stuff are not hot people. Let's just say that.
We go from this to Hanson hanging out with her hubby, and she's going to talk to some group. I guess it was a women's group, because he gave her a joke that was if we can put a man on the moon, then why not all men on on the moon, and the joke went over huge. And the husband,
Great joke.
yeah, another great lie. And then her husband has the file, and he shows it to Lane. And then now she goes and meets with Kermit. And the president, he hasn't been told yet. And Kermit wants her to step down, as does Saul Rubinek. The people of this country can stomach quite a bit. The one thing they can't stomach is the image of the vice president with a mouthful of cock. Yeah, that's what he says. And then the hubby, he takes offense when Kermit says she's a slut, or refers to her as a slut. And Lane tells them she's not going to deny it or defend herself. She says it's beneath her dignity. And then Kermit, he wants embarrassing stuff now on Runyon. And they have a guy who, I didn't look up who this guy was, but he's like their kind of investigator guy that's around, but not the FBI guy, I guess. I don't know. And he says there's no sex stuff on Runyon they can find. He's never cheated on his wife.
Oh my God, his hairstyle, I forgot to say in this movie.
Which guy?
Gary Oldman's hairstyle is really, really something in this
I guess
movie.
he shaved his head and put on a wig, I think, for it.
Yeah, it's...
Which
it's
his hair is not like that Hyde guy he said he based the character on. It's more of Jew Froey, but bald on top. Yeah, I really liked. Yeah, I thought we watched it like 3 times. Like I was like, I think that Gary Oldman's a very popular actor. I don't know among women, but among men. And yeah, I liked him. I found that Sam Elliott's hairdo was kind of weird. It seems really normal on the surface, but there's something like where he has no sideburns at all that makes it kind of odd.
Well, and he doesn't have a mustache in this movie, which also makes him look weird
Different.
and not like himself.
Yeah, this is something on IMDb says that both he and Jeff Bridges appear without their trademark facial hair. And I was like, does Jeff Bridges really have trademark facial hair? I know that Sam Elliott does. He's famous for that mustache.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. I guess he usually has like a beard or something.
In more new movies. But
I've seen him without a beard a lot.
Yeah, it's like I feel like he was in movies for like 30 years or something with no beard before he started having a beard in movies all the time. I think like maybe The Big Lebowski is the oldest movie I can think of with him with a beard. He probably had one in something else. I think he had a mustache in the 80s movies, A Million Ways to Die in LA. It's an interesting movie. Then we find out, this is probably the best joke that Lane Hansen has in the movie, where when the guy says that Shelley Runyon's never cheated on his wife, she's like, man, it's too bad he's not running in France. We could nail him on that. Then
I mean, that's also a weird joke. I mean, isn't like France known for like, isn't everyone there known for like, oh, I get it. I guess I get the joke. Yeah.
See, that's the joke. Yeah.
I guess I get it. Yeah. I mean, the jokes in this movie, that's actually one thing that I thought about this movie is some of the writing is actually not bad. And I can kind of see why you would read the script or something and be like, oh, this is like not terrible. But like some of the dialogue and like writing is not too bad, but some of it is really bad. Like the men on the moon joke.
That's the thing I watched after this. I watched The Last Castle, which was the movie that Rod Lurie did after this. And then I watched half of the movie Deterrence, which he did before this. And they're that's the one thing where I would say would point not to him plagiarizing it, because they have a similar quality where it's like, they're pretty cheesy, but you could see how somebody would be into it too. They're not formula movies. They're like they're their own thing, but they're also very silly and cheesy, both of them. But yeah, there is some kind of degree of, there is something about them that isn't where you're like, they're not the worst thing I've ever heard of.
But this probably is like the type of idiotic jokes, like the men on the moon joke, like Barack Obama would probably fucking seriously laugh at.
Oh yeah, or use it.
Like
yeah,
shit-lived people like really would fucking think that's hilarious or something. Like I don't know. So maybe it's hyper realism.
So they say that she needs to go have lunch with Shelley Runyon and talk to him, and she's like, I won't have lunch with him. And they're like, yes, you will, 1:00 tomorrow, Friday. And then when she gets there, Shelley Runyon's already eating a bunch of food when she arrives, which is impolite on his part. And then he's like, you were late. And she's like, or she's like, I'm sorry. And one of them, she apologizes for being late. It turns out she's only like a couple of minutes late. And he's already got like all this fucking food and he's already eating it. It's pretty crazy. Then he's ordered her a porterhouse, but it turns out she's a vegetarian. And then he keeps trying to push
that on purpose, maybe.
Maybe. And he keeps trying to push it on her after she tells him she doesn't eat meat. She's like, no, I really don't eat meat.
And I guess that's like supposed to be like, I don't know, like that makes her like a liberal. Like that's a liberal stereotype. Like she's like a feminist she like is a vegetarian or something.
Yeah, but she's a moderate.
Yeah, but like I guess like the other people, like Gary Oldman and everyone else, is trying to kind of paint her as a radical leftist or something.
So then she lets him know she has the secret file, and he's like, "Where'd you get that?" And he's like, "You were having deviant sex." And she says, "Who says it was deviant?" He's like, "I do." And what the American people will believe me because I will have a very big microphone in front of me. And then he tells her he doesn't hate her. She's impossible to hate because she's a groovy chick. And then she says, "I have served this country without regard to my personal income," which is another one of her virtues. See, we always have. She's like so great. She's kind of a Mary Sue. Everything about her is right. Except we find out one thing later. Then he tells her that greatness is the orphan of urgency, Lane. And you ain't got greatness, Missy LeGroove. She said he shouldn't use sex against her because you wouldn't want a woman with her finger on the button who isn't getting laid. That seems like another kind of lame joke a politician would make.
Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad. Like, God, I hate her so much.
How many times, like Joan Allen's performance is so stiff. We haven't gotten to like all the times where like she's in the confirmation hearings and just like looks off to the side or has her little moment of drinking the water and just stiffens up. And you're like, man, it's so one note. She always does the same thing. Then at the end of the movie is her looking off to the distance. You're like, this is really not communicating much to me here. Right. So then we have Slater in the White House, and he's like, I guess got a meeting with the prez, but he's like looking at the paintings of the different. He looks at FDR, then he looks at the Kennedy painting, the famous Kennedy painting, and he imitates it. Jackson Evans shows up running down the stairs. I thought that was pretty funny, where it's like the shot of Jeff Bridges running down the stairs in the background, like all fast. And I was like, did they do that just for pace in the movie, or was that something like another Jeff Bridges being like, I got an idea, how about I run down the stairs, I have energy. So then like it's like, I guess both Runyon and Evans played poker with Slater's predecessor, who always lost. And then Slater tells him he won't confirm Hansen, and Evans says to lay off her, and he tells Slater that he'll ruin his career more or less if he defies him. Oh, this is where he offers him the shark steak sandwich, another eating thing. He tells Slater in the end of the scene he's got some schmutz on him from taking a bite of the sandwich. And I was thinking that is like they have the running poker thing and these kind of Machiavellian things, like with the food, like the ordering the steak for the vegetarian and him forcing the shark steak sandwich on Christian Slater, then telling me he's got something on his suit. These are the kind of things they tell you to do in poker to throw your opponents off. Now we get a new character, this mystery investigator lady, I guess from the FBI. She was pretty attractive. I guess she's also in Minority Report, but I don't remember what character. Her name.
Oh yeah, she's the hot like military person that's like, you shouldn't hire her.
Special Agent Wilhelmina.
She should have played the Joan Allen.
Yeah, she would have been good at the Joan Allen part. She kind of reminds of Michelle Pfeiffer, but with darker hair in a way too. So she now goes and visits Hathaway at his conference table late at night, or sometime at night. He's alone. This is where she starts grilling him on the fishing trip and telling him like, well, you were fishing in that area that's a crabbing area. And he's like, oh, no wonder I didn't catch anything. And she's like, well, you're an experienced fisherman. He's like, no, I like fishing, but I don't ever have time to go. And she's like, you have all this expensive equipment or something. He's really rattled and nervous. And it kind of reminded me, this is also the part where she asks him if he wants a lifesaver, and he says, no thanks. Which,
this whole storyline with him is like also just completely unnecessary or something. Like the more I think about it, it's just like a random thing in the story that is stupid, that really has no, like, it doesn't really pay off or something. And
sure,
I hate
I guess the idea is that it's going to mean a lot to you at the solution, because you're supposed to really think he's going to ditch Lane Hansen and take Jack Hathaway in the end. Like, they do a couple of things here to throw you off the scent, and then in the end, it's supposed to really be the nail in Shelley Runyon's coffin of not confirming her, right? Like, we'll get to that. But I see where they're going with it, but it just, yeah, you're right. I don't think you ever really want Jack Hathaway or her to be vice president. Yeah, she does this thing where she offers him a lifesaver, and he's like, no thanks, and he didn't save that girl's life. Then we find out that...
it should be like two equivalent like sex scandal type of things or something. Like that would be a more
like something closer to Chappaquiddick, but without somebody dying.
Yeah, it would be like more, it would work better for the theme of the movie or something if that were the case.
Oh, and her grilling him about the fishing trip and him not having the right answers and just sort of like being really nervous and being like, oh yeah, that explains why we didn't catch anything. I think that was sort of a ripoff of the scene in the movie JFK where Kevin Costner questions Joe Pesci about the hunting trip in Dallas. And he's like, oh yeah, me and the boys went out there and well, there was one of the worst snowstorms in history. He's like, well, that's why we didn't shoot nothing. He's like, they told me you didn't bring any shotguns. Oh yeah, you know, now I remember. This is where she brings her son to the White House, and his name is Timothy Muskie Hansen. The president offers him cookies, and he won't take any kind of cookie, which I thought was kind of fucked up. I love cookies. And the president, this time he orders Kung Pao chicken with walnuts. He tells everybody that Christian Slater reminds him of himself at his age. He's misguided, but he's got something, and everybody should lay off him. I was thinking there should be a President Slater sequel, but...
Yeah, honestly, he's another person in this movie. Like, he should have been the vice president. Like, he has, like, more charisma.
Yeah, my buddy, characters. Like, when we get to another thing, the buddy I was watching it with, he said something about, like, that, well, he didn't know the twist at the end, and he said, well, at this point, I'd ditch her and go with the Riverman.
That's
And I said, well, I would ditch her and go with Slater at this point.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking at the end of the movie about, not the Riverman, about Christian Slater.
So now Evans knows about the sex thing in college, and she won't comment on it to him either, or to the press. And this is where we first get the mention of why maybe Shelley Runyon has it in for this confirmation thing so bad, is that Evans is like, oh, I was too rough on Shelley at Harvard, and then it never gets explained. He tells her to stand tall, don't be embarrassed. And then now we have Runyon talking to his like committee before the confirmation hearing. It's like Dawn or something. This is crazy. He's like, he tells them that she's a cancer of liberalism and affirmative action. They're going to sing with voices stentorian. Then we have her running at what's supposed to be Arlington National Cemetery. It's a set, and they even, I guess, put real names of people buried at Arlington on the headstones if you get a chance to see them. I'm not sure they're ever in focus. You like running and jogging. I'm not a runner or a jogger.
It's something I only started doing during COVID lockdown. So like, it's just something that I never did in my life until COVID. No, I like literally only jog in my neighborhood, sometimes at parks, but never in a cemetery. I did go walking in some cemeteries when I was in Texas over the summer, and they were like really cool, like in South Padre.
Yeah, one day my buddy and I, that when he lived around here briefly, I think in this past, I guess it wasn't even this past summer, it was probably last spring or maybe even last year or 2 years ago, I'm not sure, but it's been probably a year and a half, if not close to 2 years, or no, more like almost a year. We did like some exercise outside his apartment on some equipment he had, and then we took a walk to that Hollywood Forever cemetery and walked around. And I was thinking, like, is it rude, do you think, to jog in a cemetery or not?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like,
I remember thinking that like when we went, but maybe if you go before everybody's there.
I think it's probably not rude. I think like it's probably like nice. Like cemeteries have always
seemed like a nice place to jog to me, actually.
Yeah, like I think cemeteries are weird, like conceptually to me anyway. Like I personally wouldn't want to be like buried in a cemetery, but I think like if you wanted to, I think it's a nice thing to go be like amongst these dead people buried in the cemetery rather than to just like leave them there and like never, I don't know, it's like you're kind of like treating them like they still are around, which like they literally are. So I don't think it's like disrespectful.
To me, it's like a nice landscaped place with a bunch of flowers around. It does seem like a pleasant place to run.
Well, and sometimes there's really cool stuff, like the cemeteries that we went to in South Padre were like really cool. They had like really cool stuff like on all the graves and stuff, like really ostentatious decor, like glitter and pictures. And like,
I've never been to South Padre. That's like when I was in school in Oklahoma, that's where all the kids like on 3-day weekends and shit that were like with it would go with their families and stuff. They'd be like, we're going down to Padre.
It's cute. Like it's a cute place. I did some cool stuff there for my birthday. I went jet skiing, which I've never been jet skiing.
Me neither. I'd love to go jet skiing.
It's so fun. is like the funnest thing I've ever done in my life. So I highly recommend.
Yeah, it looks very fun. And the movie Hard Rain made it look even more fun.
It's so fun. Like jet skiing in the ocean is kind of scary. Like I heard that it's funner like on less choppy water or something, but it was so fun. I'm trying to think of like what else I did that was cool. Just swimming in the ocean and stuff is super fun. And I did go jogging at the beach.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Which is always like
I love
nice.
walking on the beach, not jogging so much. Then the hearing starts in Capitol, and Runyon, he does an intro for everybody. Then Slater immediately brings up a Q&A with Harvard students in which Hanson, they swear her in, or she swears on the Bible or something to tell the truth. And Hanson, or Reg Webster, brings up that she called religion a fairy tale when she was at Harvard, and that she swore an oath just now to an entity she doesn't believe in. Runyon starts cheap-shotting her here, but he also says that she agrees to tell the truth. But they make sure to point out that she has a disdain for religion and those practicing it, something like that, which she doesn't say. Now we have the FBI lady again in a hotel lobby talking to a hotel employee or something who says she's a classmate of a woman whom she remains friends with and was pretty wild back in college. So wild the tabloids would have a field day. And she's like, oh, did you talk to the tabloids? She's like, no. And I don't talk to her that much that often and even anymore. And she's like, well, you spoke to her on the phone on the 15th. And she's like, oh yeah, she invited me to Vegas to go to the Bellagio. But I couldn't go. I had to work. And she apparently also, this person they're talking about has a kid. So she's talking about this unnamed woman. And you're supposed to think it's Lane Hanson, but they're being really crafty and not telling you the name. Did you think they were talking about Lane Hanson?
I don't even know if I like remember this part of the movie.
This comes up at the end. This is like a weird thing. It's like, I think I did think they were talking about Lane Hanson, but after seeing on second viewing, or even just remembering it from when I saw it at the theater back in 2000, I knew that something was amiss about this. I was like, oh yeah, isn't there a whole bait and switch they're kind of misdirection in the movie? And this is one of the scenes where you're supposed to think they're talking about Lane Hanson, but it turns out later they're not. This is where we get Shelley Runyon and his wife at home, and she says that if he keeps going after Lane Hanson like this, he'll end up as a second-rate Joe McCarthy. And this is where she tells him they never had kids, but she wanted them and pictured kids in their life at this point. But she
his
decided,
life is like the worst, because it's like, yeah, like in politics or something, you should be like totally like Machiavellian and like, but in your personal life, you absolutely should not be.
yeah.
You should be like supportive and like ride or die for your husband. And this wife is definitely not that.
No, she tells him this thing about like, yeah, she wanted kids and she's sad they don't have kids now. And they've been married since they were like 21 or something at least. So there's been a lot of time here and they have money. It's like, what? And we don't find out what she does. It's like, why couldn't they have kids? She
Yeah, why
just
don't they
hates
have
him
kids?
so much.
Why isn't that more of an issue like in Gary Oldman's like political career, considering his
Yeah, he's a Republican that's very pro-life.
line of questioning in these hearings and stuff? Like,
Yeah, and then what else do we find out too? Like that the one thing she was proud of him that he signed a thing making hate crimes capital offenses.
yeah.
And then
You should be proud of him, like in shit he's done in his life. Like,
he's really accomplished.
Like,
He's a congressman.
yeah. I mean,
And we never
But not
find out that
even
he's
that.
like corrupt.
hasn't he done shit in his life, like aside from politics in your life, where you felt like you loved him or were proud of him or something? Like, why are you married to him? Like, what do
She's
you
such
even
a
like
hater.
about him?
We get this thing called the Nichols Report that has pictures of the sexcapades now. Somebody has leaked to the internet a site that's supposed to be the Drudge Report, which is where the Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing was leaked to. So this is a pretty direct reference, but the fictional version is the Nichols Report. And then this gets seen by the people at the Washington Post. And now that morning in the confirmation hearing, Runyon has it. And this part was pretty funny because it's like him trying to both introduce it into the minds of the public and the proceedings, but also decry it like officially, where he says like they need to pass the Internet Libel Protection Act that he's behind because they look
And
at
that's
this
what's
thing.
like confusing to me too, because it's like, is he doing this because his wife scolded him?
No,
or
he's
did she
just
really
straight up
convince
trying to
him?
like be a dick. He's trying to put this into people's mind, like bring it up and say it's wrong to bring it up. He's
But,
trying
like,
to
I
talk out
took
of
it
both
as-
sides of his mouth.
I took it as like he was just going to talk about it. But then when his wife scolded him, he was like, okay, like I need to find another way to do this.
So I think you
Like
would
I
have
thought
done
he was
this
trying
either
to do
way.
it to appease his wife a little bit.
Maybe you're right. He has the funny language like every citizen in the country, and indeed every citizen of the planet, needs to boycott this Nichols report, this pornography, www.nicholsreport.com. I was like, it's pretty funny because of course everybody watching is like, oh, I want to see this pornography. This was one of the better scenes of the movie. Oh, also, this is where it's pointed out that it's like suggested that she traded sexual favors for sorority admittance, though she somewhat prostituted herself. The president has a press conference and he won't comment on the sex stuff. And then this is where Slater walks in on Runyon and some aide, and they're working on a statement in response to the Washington Post story looking into whether or not she received money for sex. And Slater's like, there's no truth to this, and we'll all look like fools. And Oldman's like, just let her deny it, just that part of it, to make it more of a real thing that something happened. So I guess their big thing is to make it like wrong that she did it, is to make it look like she might have been a prostitute. Now, this is where Elaine Hansen goes on a show called America Live, and she's talking about on there how she voted to expand the President War Powers Acts in instances of terrorism. And then somebody like comes on somebody asks her about sex. We just hear her side of the conversation, and her just being like, I won't talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. Then they bring on a guy onto the show who claims that he was in the frat and had sex with her, and that he says they had the photos from that party on the frat house bulletin board for months after, and they called it Life in the Sex Lane. And Kermit's on the phone in the helicopter, and he's reading about this possible prostitution thing. I was like, this is like kind of expensive. Like anytime you just see somebody and it really looks like they shot him in a helicopter, but they only really had like one shot of him in there, so they probably could only do it for like an hour or something.
I would never go in a helicopter.
Does seem like a good way to die, especially in the post-Kobe world. Do you get fear of flying?
Not really. Like I have a prescription for benzos because I'm like an anxious person and stuff. But like I get really anxious on planes, but not because I'm afraid that the plane is going to crash. It's more like an ADHD thing where I just feel like trapped and crazy, and like I'm not good at like sitting still or just doing one thing at once. Like if you could see me like doing this podcast, it's like I'm always like fucking with shit on the desk, or like I'm just very like,
I'm like that. I get that kind of claustrophobia on planes a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like I always am like, I can understand how people just start like screaming and causing mischief on a plane, and I have to really exercise restraint to like not just go crazy, basically.
I can totally relate to that. Like,
but I'm not afraid of dying.
It's like I got a pillow for Christmas to help me sleep on planes, because I like I can never sleep on them either. And I'm hoping that I didn't use it on my flight after I got the pillow, actually, because I just wanted to read, and the flight didn't go on. Oh man, the end of the flight did. That was a crazy thing where it's like the flight ended and I was just stuck on it forever afterwards. But at any rate, I'm hoping that helps me sleep on planes, because I get
really sick on planes.
Oh really? You get the motion sickness?
I get motion sickness really bad.
Oh, interesting. I really don't. I get it in cars easier.
Yeah, I get it in both. I get it really bad on planes, but Dramamine helps. But I usually can't read on a plane, even when I take Dramamine. It's like reading in a car. It like makes me nauseous.
I get car sickness from when I ride in a car and look at my phone too much.
Yeah, I cannot look at my phone in a car. I get it from rides, like pretty much everything. But Dramamine helps. Weed helps, I guess. Yeah. I would not smoke weed on a plane, though.
Oh, come on.
I would not. No, I think like that would be, I think I would go insane if I like smoked weed and then went on a plane.
So we're back to, and then we go back to the hearing, and Runyon says they won't take the matter up about the prostitution until the FBI report comes in, but here's where he gives Hansen the chance to deny it or talk about it, try to get her on the record about it and trap her, and she says she'll wait for that report as well. She won't stoop to that level. She doesn't say that part, but she says it throughout the film many, many times. And now they get into a debate about paid maternity leave. What did you think of this part?
I don't remember the part. Oh, is this like where he starts questioning her about like whether she wants to have another baby and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
and if she gets pregnant while she's in office, will she take maternity leave? And what if she's president and needs maternity leave?
Yeah, I don't know. This just felt like weird. Like, it doesn't seem like this would have gone over well to me, like even at that time.
I don't think so either. And I was thinking like she won't comment on any of the sex stuff as she tells him that she and her husband are currently using birth control.
Yeah, it's super weird. I would just be like, yeah, I don't know. It's like when people say shit like this, I never understand why politicians like even engage in these kind of debates like about abortion or something. Like what you should say is just like, well, that's between you and God. Like I'm not commenting on that. It's not like, you know, something for me to decide as like an elected official. I mean, like that's what you should say. And yeah, as far as someone asking you about like your reproductive choices or something, it's like that's the kind of shit that you should be like, I'm not going to comment on that.
And Slater, this is like in the confirmation hearing, he wrangles at Runyon's tactics publicly here. So this is our first, like, I guess him getting mad about them saying the prostitution thing was the first time he's kind of split with Runyon. Started to shift a little, but here he does it in public when he's like, you saying she needs to get her tubes tied or something like that. Then they move from birth control to her loyalty with her party switch. And she says the Republicans changed their ideals from when she was a youth. And then they talk about she, I guess, voted to impeach Clinton. And her basis for impeaching Clinton was that military leaders at the time were being prosecuted for adultery, and he's the commander in chief. So she thought he should be prosecuted for his adultery. And she's like, and then Runyons points out that the commander in chief is not a rank. And then she says Clinton was guilty but not responsible. And that becomes another big running thing for the remainder of this movie, which I didn't even understand what that means.
Yeah, that whole thing is like weird to me. And then you find out like in a few scenes that like she like fucked her best friend's husband or something.
Yeah, this is where I think this is like we're almost there. Yeah, because like she gets asked now about adultery, if she ever committed adultery, and she's like, no. Then he reminds her she's under oath, and she's like, yes, I know that between the two of us, I'm the one who's under oath. Then that's the end of that scene. So she sorts through some business in her district, and then she asks them to put the meeting aside with these people from her district in order, because Christian Slater comes in, and he wants her to defend herself, and she says it's not their business. And she's like, do you know who Isaac Lamb was? He was the first one to name names for the HUAC, and he should have said nothing too. Everybody would have been better off.
Well, and this is like once again like the scene where you find out that she like the guy she's married to is like her best friend's husband. It's like once again not a principled person and like a super gross person. Like this is a gross person. Like, you know what I mean? Like
we're not quite there, but yes, we'll just go into it. It turns out that her current husband was like her best friend's husband when they met and started boning.
Yeah, which is super gross. Like that's not a principled person.
No.
Like someone who would fuck their best friend's husband.
That's
and
less
then,
principled
like marry
than
him
being
and have a
gangbanged.
kid.
By
No,
far,
it's absolutely
it's like you're actually
far
hurting
worse.
a friend.
Yeah, it's far worse. Like that's like this character is not respectable or something, and it makes her like principled stance like even more like
yes.
Stupid and
ludicrous,
gross.
Which I guess the definition of ludicrous is worthy of dramatization. So here we are seeing it dramatized. Now we have the big scene where Runyon's wife double crosses him and goes to the Hanson house.
Another loser.
Yeah. It says that Runyon's attack on her is an ideological rape of all women, and he's going to call her a baby killer about when they get to abortion, and she needs to look him in the eye and tell Runyon that his own wife got an abortion years ago. And they're like, oh, he's a hypocrite. He's against abortion, but his wife had one. And she's like, no, he's not a hypocrite. He doesn't know I had an abortion. I want you to use it against him. So like she's all bitching about how she wanted kids and has had a secret abortion.
It's like the most weird and evil person imaginable. Like what the fuck is wrong with this person?
Yeah,
that makes me just feel bad for him.
Yeah. So then we get into the abortion at the hearing now. And this is like a big scene where they thought this was going to get them all Oscars here. Runyon starts going off about like nothing less than a Holocaust of the unborn. And she's like, are you calling me a... Then she composes herself and has a water. I'm like, oh God, this is really bad.
I mean, and yeah, like she should have used that information against him as a politician. She absolutely should have. She should have taken like his crazy bitch wife's like crazy, like devious behavior and like used it against him on the screen. Like she's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you should be like principled in your personal life, which she's not. She fucks her best friend's husband.
Yeah, she's pretty awful.
And then she's like principled in her like political life, which is not respectable. It's like that's the opposite of what you should be.
I was thinking like Gary Oldman is I think the best part of the movie because he's totally different than other movies and he's not even American. So it's like he has such a variety of weird Americans he plays. And then he's doing this whole performance thing here and she's like so stiff and bad. And he was not nominated for an Oscar until I was looking into it. Like he didn't get nominated for an Oscar till Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy in like 2009. Isn't that crazy for all the like movies he's been in, like Sid and Nancy and all these movies over the years? It's very strange.
Watched some like weird movie that was like a cartoon version of Scrooge or something.
Oh yeah, that was in the 2000s.
And the cartoon Scrooge like looks exactly like Gary Oldman.
But the cartoon Scrooge is not him. It's Jim Carrey, right?
I have no idea. I don't remember like what movie I was watching, and maybe it's like not even Scrooge, but it's like some animated Christmas movie. I like want to say that it is like a version of Scrooge or something. And like the animated character, I honestly don't even know if it is like voiced by Gary Oldman, but the character itself looks exactly like Gary Oldman.
There's a Christmas Carol animation like by Bob Zemeckis. I've never seen it, where Jim Carrey plays Scrooge and Gary Oldman plays like 3 other people in it.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking, maybe it's not Scrooge that looks exactly like Gary Oldman. Maybe it's like one of the other characters. All I know is that I looked at the character and I was like, that's Gary Oldman without even hearing the voice or anything.
Well, many more of Gary Oldman's characters, I feel like, after a certain point, look like Gary Oldman more and more. Like I feel like this happens with a lot of actors that are like really into acting, where at some point the job becomes a job to them. They kind of have some kind of Waterloo or experience where they stop trying as hard. I think for some actors like Val Kilmer and Johnny Depp, it's hanging out with Marlon Brando on a movie gives them the idea to stop trying and just make money. But I think that for Gary Oldman, I watched a movie after I watched a couple things after this. One, I watched he reunited with the cinematographer of this movie on a movie in like 2002 or 2001, 2003 called Interstate 60, Tales of the Road. This is a very crazy movie. It's like a comedy starring James Marsden, and Gary Oldman's in it, and Christopher Lloyd's in it, and Chris Cooper's in it. And Gary Oldman plays a dude that is like, his parents were, his mom was a dwarf and his dad was a leprechaun. And he's a normal sized guy that dresses exactly like Pee Wee Herman and rides a bike like Pee Wee Herman. And he smokes a pipe that's a monkey's head, and the monkey's head sprays, when he smokes it, it has green like animated smoke, and he grants wishes to people on a fictional highway called Interstate 60 that doesn't actually exist.
Kind of like, were you the person that told me to watch that like Santa Claus movie on Netflix? Like they're really
the Christmas Chronicles, yes.
Yeah, with
Kurt Russell,
who's the Goldie
who was also in this movie, Interstate 60. Kurt Russell plays the sheriff of a fake town that like has its own synthetic drug it gives people that like eliminates their sex drive and is like 100% addictive, and the town is just filled with slaves that they made. This movie's crazy.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, the best part of the movie to me was like that at some point James Marsden, he's not always with Gary Oldman in the movie, but at some point he's driving and he picks up a hitchhiker played by Chris Cooper, who is a guy that like was an advertising executive and is dying of lung cancer from smoking, and he's like obsessed with listening to commercials with the radio and writing down lies in them. Like it's like he listens to this he just flips commercial to a station with commercials on. It's like, everyone's talking about this new movie, and he's like, that's a lie, we're not talking about it. and then like he's like, I love cigarettes because they tell you on the box they give you cancer, and they do. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of identify with this guy. That was a weird one, but I think his real Waterloo was like a year after that movie. He did a movie called Tiptoes. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
When we were at like I think it was, or when we were at college, it was new on I think it went direct to video, and it was new on video then, and I would see it like Salzers and stuff or Blockbuster and be like, what the fuck is this movie? It's a movie where Matthew McConaughey plays the only normal-sized person in a family of little people. And Gary
Why are there so many?
I don't know. Peter Dinklage is in it, and Kate Beckinsale's in it, and Patricia Arquette's in it, and Gary Oldman plays Matthew McConaughey's twin brother who's a little person. And they use like trick photography and tying his arms behind his back and stuff in a weird way to make Gary Oldman look like a little person. And like, I guess glasses to cover up the fact that he's probably at least 10 years older than Matthew McConaughey. And they're supposed to be twins. But you can tell Gary Oldman really tried. And this is another, like, when you think about how one person's role is way harder than another, it's like Gary Oldman's in all this, like, doing all this stuff to play a little person. And not only that, he's imitating Matthew McConaughey's voice, but in a higher pitch. He's doing like the exact McConaughey accent, but like slightly higher. Like he's like, all right, and I was like, he's so, like, this movie's terrible, but he's so fucking good at it. Like, and Matthew McConaughey doesn't have to do anything but just show up, who also wasn't that bad at it. And the movie wasn't quite as bad as I expected. It's supposed to be one of the worst movies of all time, but it's more like one of the worst concepts of all time. Yeah, and the end of the movie, Matthew McConaughey's wife, Kate Beckinsale, leaves him for his dwarf brother, Gary Oldman.
I have to watch that. That sounds...
It's on Amazon Prime right now. And Interstate 60 is free on IMDb TV. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch Tiptoes. If you have anybody can just sign in on IMDb and watch IMDb TV for free. So if you have internet. So.
I definitely will.
But I feel like that movie like was so reviled and then just not watched. I was noticing like after that movie, it feels like he just starts doing all the Batmans and like Harry Potters, in which if you think about it, like in those Batman and Harry Potter movies, he's not really doing anything crazy. He's just playing a dude. And like he does like tons of movies where he just like, it seems like he doesn't really try that much. And now it's like every once in a while he does something where he's like Winston Churchill, or in the movie Mank where he's like, he really brings out the big guns. But for the most part, he just kind of plays regular dudes now. And it's not like he sucks, but it's not like he's like not playing a dwarf, or he's not playing Shelley Runyon and going all crazy here. Like where it's like he's clearly put a lot of effort and time into thinking of how to do this. This is a weird scene. The next scene after this is like where the FBI lady visits the guy golfing, and she shows him like a casino account balance, which is very confusing in the moment. I wonder if it was supposed to be like make you think it had something to do with the thing with her dad that got cut out of the movie, had that been in the movie. But as on its is when you're watching the movie now, it just seems like completely weird. Like, who's this guy she's talking to? Why is she talking to him? What's this about an account balance at the Bellagio? Maybe we were supposed to think she was was Lane Hansen doing prostitution now a few months ago? I don't know what they're wanting you to think is going on here, but it's just strange.
Yeah, I think when I was watching it, I did have like some sense that like, yeah, this was like about that Chappaquiddick thing, but I don't know why.
Okay, because she talked to the guy before, the Chappaquiddick guy, maybe.
Yeah, and like I can't remember like what part you get to where like they talk to like the girl's friend or something.
That was the scene you said you didn't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, I do remember that scene. I guess I remember it like coming later or something. But yeah, like maybe that's why I associated it with this, because doesn't she talk about the Bellagio in that scene or something?
Yes, that's where the Bellagio gets brought up. Yeah, you're right. It would be you would associate with that chick. You're right. But it was very weird to me, even on rewatching. I was like, this scene where she talks to this guy, if you're looking for something to cut from the movie, but I guess they explain it later. But even with them explaining it, I was like, as long as they're chopping like 30 minutes out of this movie, which another reason why the movie kind of feels cheap or something in some parts is like, yeah, if we think it seemed like they had to rush to make this length of movie, the movie was like half an hour longer. But anyway, so this we cut to now, here's what you're talking about, where Muriel Hemingway gets sworn in at the hearing. We get a Muriel Hemingway cameo, and she's the ex of her husband and her friend, and this is where we find out about the cheating. And Lane Hansen apologizes to the press afterwards, saying what she did was wrong and she regrets causing her friend pain. And Bridges, now she meets with Bridges and Kermit and maybe Saul Rubinek, and Bridges like, you define the difference between guilty and responsible.
Well, I also think like people would hold her so much more responsible for like fucking her best friend's husband than like getting gangbanged in college.
I would think so.
Like, it's so much worse. Like, I don't.
This came out in 2000, which is when George Bush ran, and they were George W. Bush, and they had that he was doing cocaine in college in that campaign, and he got 2 terms.
Yeah, I don't think anyone cared. I mean, I feel like a man doing cocaine is definitely probably going to be viewed like differently than like a woman getting gangbanged or something. But I just think
yeah, you're probably right.
People would have more sympathy for that than like fucking your best friend's husband. I mean, no one's going to like excuse that.
Tough call. It's like it needs massaging. Like, isn't like, because we have the cases of like where some people have done some pretty despicable things in their own marriages, like in committing adulteries and stuff. And this is the thing where like she denied doing an adultery, but it turns out
it's like, I don't care that she committed an adultery. Like, it's her best friend. Like, that's to me like the issue. It's like her best friend's husband. It's like that's what's like a problem. It's like I don't care if she like her. I don't care about like the cheating, and I don't think like most people would really like hold anyone like too responsible for that or something. Like cheating is like whatever, but like it's your fucking best friend. Like that's the problem.
Yeah, your best friend is now America. Are you going to cheat on it?
Somebody should have said that in this movie for sure.
But they point out, I guess, that I never knew this, that it's not adultery if you're not the person who's married. So
yeah, well, I mean, fair enough. So she's not technically like lying under oath.
She did not lie under oath. So that was very reminiscent of the Clinton thing, where he had a different definition of sex that was just penetration, which I guess is also the way that Monica Lewinsky defined it on those tapes with Linda Tripp. She keeps saying they didn't have sex, they just fooled around, because they never actually, I guess they never had intercourse, according to even Monica Lewinsky in private. Then they're like, the problem now isn't that you lied, it's that you look like a soap opera sex fiend homewrecker now, which fair enough. This is where my buddy said he'd ditch her for the Riverman, and I said I'd ditch her for Slater. And then they want her to fight back on this and say how a man would never have to put up with this. And they're like, confess like Clinton did with Jennifer Flowers. Which is the weird Jennifer that's spelled like with a G, Jennifer Flowers. Oh, you know what's funny is like when I was a teenager, you think like, I don't know, I had an unrealistic view of myself where I just thought like all the women that Clinton was like accused of doing things with were so hideous. But looking back now, they're all like kind of attractive to me.
Yeah, like my dad always had a crush on Monica Lewinsky when I was growing up. He was always like, she's so cute. I don't know why everyone's like my dad thought Monica Lewinsky was hot.
Well, it's like when you see her when she's like first there in the pictures of when she's an actual intern before the latter days of the relationships. Like I feel like she got less cute as time went on. I never thought she was cute when I was younger, but now that I'm older and I watched that documentary, I was like, oh yeah, I could see what he was going for in the beginning. And then when she's on Larry King, I'm like, she doesn't look too good here.
She looks super good now, in my opinion.
Yeah. I haven't seen her recently, even though she's been in the news, but I don't think I really looked at pictures of her.
She looks good. She looks better than she did in the 90s, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that. She definitely has good features. Yeah, she's a cute lady. This is the big Oscar scene in a way, or one of them for both Jeff Bridges and Sam Elliott. They both yell all crazy in this scene, like where Jeff Bridges is like, "Ah!" and then for no reason. That's in the trailer, actually, him yelling there. And then Sam Elliott does some crazy yelling here too. Like after this, seems like just on the day when they were acting, they were like, let's all get really heated today, and they both went for just some crazy yelling in parts. So she cries here, and it looks very much like fake crying to me, just because she's so like icy. And then she says she's prepared to step down, but will not comment on her personal life and her past. And Bridges says he needs to show everyone why she's his nominee in her closing statement. And so
which
then
no one can understand, and you will not understand this movie.
This is just why she's the nominee. No,
yeah.
Other than that she's a woman, which is what Shelley Runyon complains about
yeah,
from the start.
It really is affirmative action in this case. Affirmative action gone awry.
He was right the whole time. So now she gives her closing statement. Although it does seem like she was a better choice than Jack Hathaway by the end. We don't know. It probably should have been this guy Malloy.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see. So she gives her closing statement in the end, and she stands for a woman's right to choose, the abolition of the death penalty, and strong armed forces, and to take every gun out of every home, to make it a federal offense to sell cigarettes to minors, term limits, campaign reform, separation of church and state. And then she talks about how she may be an atheist, but she does go to church. And her church is this building.
This is like the worst part.
It's really bad. Where it's like, if you're a religious person, you'd be like, fuck this. But it also kind of called back in the Clinton thing, because Ken Starr, who Shelley Runyon is really based on in the screenplay, Ken Starr called it the Temple of Justice. So her church thing is kind of a ref to that. Anyway, so then we have what I thought was the nadir of the movie, when Christian Slater visits Lane Hanson playing basketball in the gym. And I thought her basketball looked like a person who'd never played basketball before. It looks like she barely mastered dribbling at all.
She doesn't look like a person who's like sporty or jogs. Like, she just looks like a person who just straight up doesn't eat and like doesn't ever do anything physical. Like, she's just like a little she's just like a dour little waif.
Her dribbling isn't terrible, but she only dribbles with the right hand, which she's probably right-handed. She never tries a crossover, even when it would make sense. And her shooting is awful. And then she talks the ball the entire time, even before she knows Christian Slater's there. She talks the ball as if she was like a person who thinks they're being watched, which I thought was really bad acting. I was like, the screenplay can't be like, get in there, get in there, get in there. Oh, no. Like, I was like, this has to be ad-lib. If it's not, she should have shot him. Yeah. And I was thinking, who do we think is the worst basketball player, her or Gary Oldman? I think they both look like they're not athletes at all. They both look like people who just don't eat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This reminded me that seeing her doing this basketball and thinking back on other things we've seen is like, I was listening to a podcast where Michael Mann was talking about Heat. And he said like, actors have amazing hand-eye coordination, because he's talking about like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino shooting target practice with cops, and saying that like after a little while they were way better than almost any of the cops. And I was like, do actors really have amazing hand-eye coordination, or is he just nuts? Because like we see in these movies, we've seen Christian Slater not be able to skateboard, not be able to like hold a controller. We see the people playing basketball. Remember the game of catch and mobsters?
Yes.
It's like,
and we talked about how it was like The Room or something.
Yeah. It's like we constantly see actors not be able to do things. And then
it seems like actors are really good at a lot of things. Hand-eye coordination is definitely not one of the things I would choose.
Yeah, and then Hill Harper's in that movie, He Got Game, with Ray Allen, and Spike Lee like didn't think you could get an actor to be believable enough as an NBA prospect, so he cast Ray Allen. As maybe like Oliver Stone, Spike Lee, and Michael Mann are just nuts who are good at making movies, but at anything else they're just like insane or something. I don't know. Here's where Kermit meets with Wilhelmina and gets her report, gets the FBI report, which good thing they got it in time for the confirmation hearings, which are over now. And he asks her if she's shown it to anyone or talked about it to anyone, a boyfriend or anything. And she's like, no. And this is where she's like, this is probably really inappropriate, but please don't drop her. She's our hope, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, you're right. That's totally inappropriate. And shuts the door on her. Which his performance is pretty good in the movie, you're right. He and also Saul Rubinek is good, but kind of playing a very Saul Rubinek-y role. Saul Rubinek kind of already played that part in the movie Nixon. Oh, now Runyon is eating on a ship with President Evans, and President Evans has the oatmeal cookie now that he's ordered. It has giant that tastes like grapes, and he says Runyon is getting retribution on him for Hartford and has really kicked his ass. And Runyon's like, I'm not going to confirm her. And he's like, you should switch to Hathaway now and save time rather than dragging this out. And Bridges here, he agrees to Jack Hathaway as long as Runyon will tie himself to Hathaway and publicly state that Hathaway will get a smooth confirmation. He's like, you really need to marry yourself to him, Shelley. You need to make his sinking your own sinking if it happens. They're on a boat. And Runyon agrees to all this. So now we have this, they're all going to meet up. They're going to have Hathaway and Hanson.
Well, and wouldn't you think that was like suspicious?
Yes.
This seems very weird.
Yeah, it's like, well, I really need to tie myself to this guy. Not just confirm publicly that he'll get a smooth confirmation so that you can't double cross him. He's like, you really need to marry yourself to this guy. It's like, well, why? But anyway, yeah, you're right. So then this is the big, what we would say, I guess, is kind of the climax of the movie, where Runyon and Hathaway and Hanson are all going to meet with the president before some kind of dinner, like I forget what it was called, not the DARPA net meet or dinner, but some state dinner for a charity or something, and they're all in tuxes and stuff. And Runyon arrives, and outside he meets with press, and he makes his big pro-Hathaway statement where he says he stakes his career on his smooth and efficient confirmation. And I was thinking when they get in the scene here that we have three people here who were all affected by Hannibal Lecter in some way. Because William Peterson, who is Hathaway, he was Will Graham in Manhunter, who had emotional scarring from Hannibal Lecter and had to deal with the Tooth Fairy, who was getting advice from Lecter. And Joan Allen was the lady that was dating the Tooth Fairy, who was getting help from Hannibal Lecter. And then Gary Oldman was defaced by Hannibal Lecter in the movie Hannibal, and then eventually I think killed by him later on in the movie, unless I'm misremembering the movie Hannibal.
I haven't seen it.
You've never seen Hannibal?
Mm-mm.
Have you ever seen Manhunter?
No, I've seen Silence of the Lambs, but I haven't seen the other two.
Holy shit, you should see Manhunter. That's a good movie.
Okay, I'll watch it.
I also really enjoy Silence of the Lambs, and I think Hannibal is kind of like dirty fun in a way. It's not great, but Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs are both pretty awesome movies to me, almost as awesome as this movie. And so then they make William Peterson's evil wife wait outside the room where they're going to talk and confer, and allegedly this is where Hanson's going to be told she's dropped and Hathaway's going to be VP. But before they talk, Bridge is like, I can't stomach the idea of that she state dinner food. I want, and so he calls up and asks for a grilled cheese with Munster, and the White House is like, sorry, sir, we're out of Munster. So he finally got him. He say he won, which is and now he turns out, and now he tells Peterson that he's getting arrested for negligent homicide, not becoming vice president at all, but he's getting arrested. A guy comes in to read him his rights, and
so he's the river.
Yeah.
I think he should. I think I would have chosen the Riverman.
Even after committing negligent homicide?
Even after committing like a low-key murder.
Yeah, he paid this lady, I guess so he paid the lady to drive off the bridge and then he couldn't save her.
Yeah, I would choose the Riverman. I mean, that is like at least like he's a crazy, like interesting guy.
I don't know.
Riverman has character.
Really rubbed me the wrong way. Murder's okay, but the flat tax, that affects us all.
I mean, honestly, yeah.
So all the Vegas stuff, it turns out, was inquiry into that lady that died in the car. None of it was about Lane Hanson. It was like the lady that wanted to take her friend to the Bellagio. The expense accounts or at the Bellagio or whatever are all about this lady who was ex-military that got money from Hanson. It was showing the spending of the money, or maybe the money put into an account for. It was following the money with that and her actions. Her trip to Bellagio in Vegas was planned to go with the girl for.
It's so complicated, but okay, so like the Riverman, how much he cares about like being vice president, like he is willing to like do a little bit of murder in order to like become the vice president, whereas like Joan Allen will not even deny being.
Well, he was willing to do a murder, and then when it didn't work, he was just like, fuck it, and his wife was like, no, you go to your buddy who is going to be in charge of confirming and get it. And then he's like, all right, fine, I guess. So
yeah, I would choose the river.
Also, I never realized how much
the
heavier William Peterson
more.
President, he had set Runyon up, and Runyon's like, you set me up. And he's like, well, let's just say I'm guilty, but not responsible.
This part is the corniest and worst thing, like, maybe I've ever seen.
Yeah, the movie gets into some really bad territory now. All the rest of the movie is just way terrible. So they like, we know you leaked all that stuff about the sex and the prostitution to the Nichols report / Drudge report, but we also know your heart was in the right place and Hartford was really a tough one. I'll see you tomorrow or something. And they're like going to be pals or something. But then, so you think like that could pretty much just be the end of the movie, more or less. But no, the movie has like, I don't know how much longer left. It feels like forever, but it probably couldn't be.
It's probably like 15 minutes or something, but it feels feels like an eternity.
Yeah, so then we have the part where they smoke the cigar together, and they go out on. So the president, after this state dinner, or maybe during it, wanders off the reservation away from the Secret Service onto a golf course with Joan Allen, and she tells him in private that, like, he asks her. They smoke a cigar together, and there's a line about not inhaling. She inhales and coughs. He's like, "You're not supposed to inhale." It's another Clinton thing here, and also the cigar itself is kind of a reference to the Clinton sex scandal, of course. And the president does like some crazy comedy with his cigar when he asks about her college adventure. She starts talking about, he's like, "Just wish that I would have been in college then," or something. Or "Just wish I'd still been in college." And he does a crazy, like, I don't know if this is what George Burns he's doing with his cigar comedy. But so anyway, he finally gets her to talk about what happened. And it turns out, like, she was supposed to, as a sorority initiation, have sex with two guys from this frat. And then she went to do it. She said no, but then finally decided to do it. And she went into the frat. The guys detrowed, and she grabbed one guy's penis.
Oh, there's another really stupid joke here. I can't remember exactly.
No, where she says, like, she's like, "Then I said, no thanks, I don't smoke. And then I ran out of there."
Like, and wouldn't her character be cooler if she really did get gangbanged too?
Yes.
Wouldn't that also be better than if she didn't? Because it's like, it's making this really weird point. Like, see, she is like a good person. Like, she didn't get gangbanged or something. And once again, who cares about that?
The point is, like, she didn't get gangbanged, but she's not sexless. She bones her husband in the office and he got him to cheat on his wife, her best friend. But she wouldn't talk about the gangbang. She wouldn't defend herself is the thing, because that's truly beneath her to talk about those kind of things that are not an influence on how she would go.
But, like, it has to be that she actually didn't get gangbanged, because, like, that's, like, some sort of weird, like, moral thing in this movie. But, like, none of the other stuff is. Like, her, like, fucking her best friend's husband, or, like, whatever other fucked up stuff she does. But, like, this is, like, some kind of, like, weird moral thing where it's, like, she actually didn't get gangbanged. It's, like, I would like her more if she did.
Yeah, she says that then they had another lady did get gangbanged at the party, and that's who the photos of, and that she talks about how nice that lady's physique was. And yeah, the lady that they show in those pictures was really hot. That was another reason I didn't think it was her. I was like, that's supposed to be young Joan Allen? This lady looks way hotter. She said that, like, she has a birthmark on her thigh that is not on the body double, which also kind of reminds of the Clinton thing where people said that, like, he had a freckle or something on his penis or something like that. I forget. There's some
and it's not even that Joan Allen's not, like, hot or something. It's just like, yeah, she's like the mom from Pleasantville. Like, that's the only role she could ever play, is like a boring mom. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. Like, it's not that she's not hot. Like, there's lots of people who aren't, like, physically super beautiful that have, like, sex appeal or something. Joan Allen just, like, isn't one of them.
She just doesn't scream sex. Yeah, it's like she's an attractive person. Yeah, you're right. Or maybe she's not attractive. I don't know how do you define attractive. I'm not attracted.
Yeah, I mean, she's got good bone structure. Like, technically, she's attractive. She has, like, weird hair or something. And that's, like, coming from a person, look, I have, like, super curly hair or something, but I would never, like, cut my hair like that or something. I don't know.
Yeah, she has that haircut that seems to suit her.
Yeah. She just doesn't have sex appeal.
But she tells him, even after she tells him that it was still not his business to know. Oh, yeah. He says he's like, now we can tell everyone that nothing happened, and we go to the press with this. And she's like, and I guess that's what we find out. I guess that's what was in Christian Slater's report, was finding out that it was all bullshit or something.
Yeah.
Do we talk about that? Yeah, Christian Slater went and gave her a report saying, and when he wanted her to defend herself. So he had
once again,
this
this is so fucking lame or something. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
He double-crossed Runyon by sharing things with the opposition, which in real life Ken Starr, I think, actually in some ways did. Anyway,
like, her refusing to, like, talk about it or something and be like, it's all just so lame. Like, this is the lamest way to, like, stand up for your principles or something. It's so lame.
Yeah, so she said even now she will not tell the public, because she would rather not be vice president than lower herself.
Which is really how liberals are. And that's why they suck at everything and
really
lose.
I don't know. I think that both sides of the aisle have both kinds of people. Like, Bill Clinton and his wife clearly had no problems lying and, like, doing things, right? Like, the reason he was in trouble was not for cheating with Monica Lewinsky in the White House. He was in trouble for lying about not cheating with Paula Jones, right?
I just feel like it's like the sort of shit where it's like,
Well, they were also being
during,
investigated for years for Whitewater by Ken Starr or something.
and it's like, I'm not like a fucking like liberal or something. I'm like a leftist or something, which doesn't even exist in America. But it's just like, I think like I look at people like Al Franken or something who had to resign because he like took a picture like pretending to grope someone's boobs or something. It's like, that's where liberals are like fucking pathetic. Like a conservative would never. Like you could be a fucking child molester as a conservative and just like be like, yeah, like I married someone who was 15 and like it's fine. Like people will forgive you for that. It's just like, but you have to resign for taking a stupid fucking photo because it's like principled. It's just like,
you're the one out saying all this stuff.
You're never going to like get anywhere with that kind of attitude, and I like don't respect that at all.
I kind of think like it's like unless you're doing stuff all the time and always proud of it, it's like everyone has fallen short of the glory of God at some point. It's like just don't make a fucking career of it.
It's just like if
it doesn't affect how you're going to govern me, what it's not really my business. Like this movie's kind of trying to say.
It's like you should never like, I don't know. Yeah, like I don't feel like being principled as like a politician or like pretending to have principles in this way like gets you anywhere. It's like extremely stupid and corny. It's like, yeah, like being a Republican, being a quote unquote conservative, it's like, yeah, like they voted for Donald Trump, who's like the least principled person on the face of the earth. Like, it's like no one cares. Like no one cares. Like even the dumbest person on earth like doesn't think that like Donald Trump is like being honest when he says like women who get abortions should go to jail or something. It's just like I feel like Democrats and liberals have this like stupid thing where it's like I have to just like say like the right thing or something. Like I have to like stand up for my principles rather than just saying like whatever the fuck you need to say.
Well, here Joan Allen has her big line where she's like, principles only mean something when you stick by them when they're inconvenient. And this was also a kind of a play on 90s politics because a big rising star in the Republican Party, J.C. Watt from Oklahoma, had a speech at the 1996 Republican convention where he had the line, doing the right thing only matters when nobody's looking, or something, or matters, something to that effect, that like it only matters if you do the right thing when nobody's looking. But then he stopped running. I have intel that he stopped running for office because he had been quite unethical with his taxes and things when no one was looking. Not sexual things, but into his own indiscretions with money. Now we have the next day. So the movie is still going now. So I guess the idea now is that because she won't defend herself still, even after Hathaway's been arrested for murder, that she's going to be ditched. And the nomination's going to be go to the never seen Malloy. But I would have liked it. Only thing I would have liked of seeing Malloy is if it had been played by actor Matt Malloy, who has been in many Robert Altman movies, is in the movie In the Company of Men. But he also in the movie Armageddon had a cameo as a character named Malloy, because they just couldn't name his guy. He was just like guy in a suit, number 12,000 in this Michael Bay movie. The president is expected to change the nomination to Malloy, and it's the morning, and she's running at Arlington, and she's ready just never to see any of these people again in this cesspool. Then the president arrives at the Capitol. Then he gives this quote about Napoleon, or by Napoleon, about how like greatness in politics is very like rare because it's rare because it requires great pettiness and great leadership to be great at politics. And it's like you need the pettiness to get the job, and then you need the like greatness to do, or you need the wisdom or something, or something. I forget what.
This fucking scene is literally like libtard fanfic.
Yeah,
like,
but it is kind of a good quote.
The worst thing I've ever seen.
Like what Napoleon said is kind of true. If you watch politics, it's like everybody who gets high in politics has to have done something dirty to get money or to do something they're probably not the proudest of. But then you actually do have to make hard decisions once you're there and do a good job. So that is probably why it's so rare to have great politicians. I don't know, or I thought there was some wisdom in the Napoleon quote.
I think there's wisdom in the Napoleon quote, but like the actual like message of all of this is just like liberal fucking fan fiction. It's like horrible.
Yeah, which there was also, this is at the same time as, I've never watched it, but wasn't there also like two things I never saw? I never saw The West Wing, which also I think had like what's his face? Martin Sheen was kind of known for playing kind of a liberal pipe dream version of a president. And there was the movie The American President a few years previous with Michael Douglas.
Which apparently has like the same kind of vibe where it's just like, this is like a woman of integrity or something, from what I understand.
And that was a big hit, which I think this movie was a big disappointment, which may be like, A, because it's not that good, B, because I think people might have been tired of politics with it being an election year and the Clinton thing having just happened, and C, because American president already made all the money. But I don't know, maybe not. He calls out everyone and says he should have come down here sooner, and waved his finger at everyone and told them how great Lane Hansen was, and Lane Hansen wants to step down, but he won't let her. She will be vice president. A woman will serve in the highest office. And he gets mad. Shelley Runyon tries to leave at some point, and then he singles him out. And he's like, "You, Shelley Runyon." It's all crazy. Then the movie is over with
Shelley Runyon did nothing wrong.
Yes, then she at the end though, her husband Robin Thomas, he tells her that she got the nomination or that she's not being dropped, and she hugs him and then looks off into the distance with her visionary eyes, and then we go to the end credits. It's the
worst thing I've ever seen. And then like the ending credits say like, "This is for our girls," or something. Horrible. I
think our sons needed a few more shots.
I literally am getting like, I'm like physically cringing just thinking of it, honestly.
Yeah, the ending is so hilariously bad. Oh, also Michael J. Fox was in that Interstate 60 movie. in his Parkinson's-y days. But yeah, if you ever heard the story, like I watched podcast, the Kevin Pollak show, who was the president in Rod Lurie's Deterrence, but he had Richard Kind on once, who is from the show Spin City, among many other things. And he told this story about Michael J. Fox, that when Michael J. Fox had Parkinson's, like they were making the show and he didn't tell anyone he had Parkinson's. And he just started always being in his trailer or late. And he was just smoking all the time and missing. And everybody was just like, this guy's a dick.
And spoilers.
He's really like unprofessional and holding up the show and everybody's time. Like, what a diva. And then they found out he had Parkinson's the whole time. That's why he was always late or missing. And they all felt super bad. Good story. Heartwarming story.
It is a good story. I just think it's funny that the transition back to that came from nothing.
No, you're right.
But
I always just think that story is interesting about Michael J. Fox.
But it's very funny.
Oh, also in the Interstate 60 movie, James Marsden goes to a site called MajorDecision.com to find out if he should wear a tie to his job interview or something, or to lunch with someone. And the MajorDecision.com is spelled wrong. It's the C and the S are transposed.
Did you write this down?
Yes.
Because I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
and that makes it even
Also, when I was in Oklahoma, oh shit, I was talking to my dad, and James Marsden is from I didn't think he was from my exact town, but he's from nearby. And I was telling my dad this because I was like, James Marsden's one of those people that's not that bad at acting, but he probably would have a better career if he was just slightly less traditionally handsome. They're just he just looks too handsome. And my dad was like, wait a second, I went to high school with this guy named Marsden who was super handsome. And then he just kept looking at old yearbooks, and it turned out my dad went to high school with James Marsden's dad and James Marsden's mom. And he's like, yeah, his dad was a short guy who was really handsome. Maybe he was even a model when we were in school. And then his mom was just a super beautiful lady. And then they got married and were never heard from again. But I guess they made James Marsden super handsome man.
I can't believe he remembers this guy. He was so handsome that your dad never forgot how handsome he was.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My dad has a great memory. He's one of sometimes he forgets things, but he's kind of renowned as a memory person. Yeah, that's all I had about Interstate 60. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to point out about I like Gary Oldman. You know how people are always making remakes of things and stuff, and they're like, oh, last time it was like this, so let's get all crazy. One thing I liked about Gary Oldman is in that movie Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's a remake also in that it's maybe even been done twice, but first time not with the title Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with, I forget what, James Mason as George Smiley. But it's very famously, in England at least, it was a BBC miniseries in the early 80s with Alec Guinness as the main dude. And it's like beloved. It's excellent. Like it's way better than the movie with Gary Oldman, actually, which is a decent movie. But the old miniseries, if you ever watch, is awesome. But at any rate, like they asked him about playing the part and they're like, well, Alec Guinness is so famous for playing this part. What are you going to do? And he's like, dude, I read the book and the way he plays it is exactly right. I'm going to do exactly what he did, more or less. And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool that he was just like, I'm not going to be interesting just to be interesting and fuck this up. He's like, no, I'm just going to do exactly what that other guy did.
These were the notes that you had about the movie, like mostly about like, some other weird ass movie.
Yeah.
I just talked about Gary Oldman's amazing hairline, the eating.
Even talking about the movie made me hungry.
Yeah, well, I'm starving because it's fucking dinner time.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is for you.
But
Okay, well, let's go to the Slater rater. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give the movie? We ragged on it a lot.
I'm gonna give it like a 4.
I'm going to give it a 5. It was very watchable. Like, it kept me going, like, for the time it was on, but it wasn't, I can't say it was good, but it was a mediocre movie.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'll give it a 5 too, because you're super right. Like, it is like a 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. You can't
like
say it was a 6. I can't give
it's
it,
like
I can't put it in the top
exceedingly
half of
average.
things. But
Yeah.
I'm not mad that it exists.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 too, actually.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give Christian Slater's performance?
I'll give him a 7.
I'm going to go with, man, this is tough. I'm going to go with an 8. It's not spectacular, but he's certainly, he is a charismatic junior senator.
Yeah, it's like he's the most charismatic person almost in this.
Yeah, I liked your
In
vibe
spite
on
of-
that Sam Elliott was really good. I didn't really think of him that much, but he did have a really good kind of different for him part at the time in this.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, I love him anyway, but he was good. I mean,
Yeah.
he really never disappoints, but
Mr. Catherine Ross. Yeah, you're right. He is always pretty good. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Christian Slater's hunkiness?
I would also say a 7.
Wow. I'm going to go with like a 2. I don't find him very hunky in this movie.
I think he's pretty hunky in it, actually.
Wow.
I'm gonna say like a 7.
You and I really differ on the hunkiness of him in the movies. That's good.
Yeah, well, not
in
in.
couple,
I think we both agreed that he was like the hunkiest in.
like mobsters.
No, in the skateboarding one.
Oh yeah, Gleaming the Cube. Yeah,
He's extremely hunky in that.
Yeah,
I
you're right.
think he was pretty. I think he was pretty handsome in this, actually.
Yeah, I'm only gonna go with a 2. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more Christian Slater would you like in the movie?
I'm sorry, this is the one I always forget, but like the most.
Is
Like I would like to
okay.
see the
That's a
maximum
10.
amount more.
I'm also gonna say a 10.
Yeah.
Which means this movie, let's see, we got 14, or no, wait. I think this movie's probably gonna get another F. Are you reading anything right now?
I just finished reading this book called We. That's like this Russian book that supposedly inspired, what's that?
So you
Brave
finished-
New World.
Oh, crazy. So you finished the Chekhov book. This is not the Chekhov
Yeah, I
book.
finished the Chekhov book and then I started reading this book. That one's really short. Like
I never
the
read
Chekhov
Brave New
one.
World.
Oh, it's like good. This one's really cool, actually. Like We is really cool. I really would recommend it, actually. This is one I
Who's
would
it
really
by?
recommend. The guy's name is like Evgeny something.
Oh, wow. Russian literature. Always a fave on the Christian Slater monitor.
Evgeny Zamyatin or something. Yeah, I do read like a lot of Russian literature, but for my book club, I'm going to read this Mark Twain book that's called like Pudd'nhead Wilson
Oh,
and Those
sure.
Amazing
I've thought
Friends or
about reading
something.
that a few times and never picked it up. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to read that one next.
It's like a
I
political
think.
satire, some said.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading for the book club, and then I'll probably read something else too, because that's not for a month. So, and it's short, so I probably won't start reading that one right away. But I don't know what I'm going to read.
I've been reading
After.
Gaijin by James Clavell. Got about 200 pages left in that behemoth.
That
You
one
reading those
sounds- what is-
James Clavell's this guy who he directed the movie Sir with Love, which has the classic Lulu song.
Oh, I just watched that. It's my mom's favorite movie.
Really?
I just watched it because Sidney Poitier died. And
Oh
that's,
yes,
like,
I've never
her-
seen it, but I know the song like the back of my hand.
Oh,
How
I've
do
seen it-
you thank someone
I've
who's
seen it so
taken
many
you from
times.
crayons to perfume?
Because my mom is obsessed with Sidney Poitier. So she was like devastated. And we watched that movie because it was on, and that's like her favorite movie.
One time, Sidney Poitier told me that Bill Cosby was a really good guy. After
We also watched the movie that he
After
made with
the-
Bill Cosby
I believe he
too.
made several. with Bill Cosby. Maybe I'm
The one
wrong.
he like directed this movie, like it's called Uptown Saturday Night or
Sure.
something.
I
I
think
like watched that also.
Is Bill Cosby also in Let's Do It Again with him? I think he did multiple with Bill Cosby. That's why I asked him about it, because Bill Cosby was in trouble. And I was like, hey, Portier, what do you think about Bill Cosby? And he's like, he's a great man. It's like, whoa.
Was this like a
Dork.
or something?
It was an interview, yeah, that I promptly lost. So it never made the light of day. Otherwise, I'm sure it probably would have. Yeah, so James Clavell, he directed that movie, but he's more famous for he wrote all these movies about East Asia, or all these books, novels about East Asia. He was a POW in World War II, and he wrote a movie about, or a book about his experience called King Rat. It was made into a decent but not as good movie as the book. The book was really good, starring George Segal in the 60s. Then after that, he wrote these huge, long fucking tomes of novels called, one's called Shogun, one's called Taipan, one's called, the one I'm reading, Gaijin, and then there's one called Noble House. And they're all about like the opening of East Asia, China, Hong Kong, Japan to Western trade. Shogun was made into a massive 70s miniseries, and then Taipan was made into an 80s movie that's like a big budget flop that I actually think is pretty entertaining with Brian Brown. And then Noble House, I've never seen. It was made into a TV miniseries in the 80s with Pierce Brosnan, but nobody's ever made Gaijin, and I've read the others, but I haven't read Gaijin yet. I'm reading it now. Really, I enjoy it. It's very educational.
The guy who does this short novel club, like he wants to do another one that's like super long books. And I would be like interested in doing that too. Cause like as everyone gets mad at me for, I was like going through this phase where I like just had like really bad anhedonia, and I like didn't want to read anything. I didn't want to watch anything. I didn't want to listen to music. Like I really
Are you enjoying music
I said
again?
that I hate music. Yeah, no, I don't really hate music. Come on. I used to write about music for a blog. Like both of my parents were in the music industry when I was growing up. Like I don't really hate music. It's been a huge part of my life. So just so everybody knows, I don't really hate music.
We received a comment on one of the videos the other day on YouTube that complained about your hatred of music.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like,
I'm sorry. I don't truly hate music, everyone.
With the James Clavell novels, I'd say like the ones that are like super long are more educational. They're all page turners. Like they're soapy as fuck and cheesy. There's like tons of sex and violence. Like it's like they're kind of silly, but they're good for you can get through them even though they're super long. But the one of when he was a POW is not as long. It's like shorter, and it has like really good dialogue and stuff. That one that's like based on his actual experience. It's like kind of a different vibe. And then he sort of uses it to make a chain with the others into a weird like graphs on stuff from it into the others. Like Gaijin, Taipan, and Noble House are like a series, and Shogun, and they work in stuff from Shogun and stuff from King Rat. But those kind of almost feel like they're their own things in their own way, that he's just like, you know what, I wrote these other things about Asia. Let me put in this character as like his grandfather's in this one now. But it has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, like I started reading short novels for this thing, and like that got me into like reading again. So yeah, now I want to start reading like longer stuff, because now I really like reading again.
Good.
It's like crazy. Like reading, it helps me sleep really well, actually. But I've been having these like really weird dreams that like closely mirror like what's happening in my real life. Like it's like a dream that's like exactly of my day, but like more like nightmarish or something. It's like really weird.
I have movies about, or dreams about movies. Not as much about books. The other day I had a dream that some friends and we went to see Michael Mann had added scenes to Heat, and we went to see it. But when we went to see it, he hadn't actually filmed scenes. He'd gotten new actors, James Caan and a bunch of unknowns, and was just staging live on locations scenes from Heat. And we were the only people that showed up, and the actors kept cracking up, like interacting with us and tripping over us and stuff. And I was like, this cannot be cost effective to just keep restaging on location scenes of Heat for 3 people.
I've been having dreams that are like an exact reenactment of my day. Like if I went to like a book club, it would be like I have a dream about going to book club, but like everyone's like being really mean to me there.
Oh, sure.
Weird like that. Like that's the
that
kind of
makes
dreams
sense.
I've been having. It's like really weird.
One more note on Gary Oldman. Right now, he and Douglas Urbanski are working on a spy show with the writer of Broken Arrow, Graham Yost.
Wow. That's a weird coincidence.
I hope that it's as good as Broken Arrow.
It can't be worse than Broken Arrow, I would think. I mean, it can't be.
Yeah, you're right.
It can't be worse.
Well, I guess next time we're going to be watching the next episode is not going to be with Reno Carson. It's going to be a very special episode. Not that episodes with Reno Carson are not the best episodes of all, which they are. But the next one is going to be with my cousin, who has been brought up many times, Zach Ramirez. We're going to be looking at a movie you disparaged on a previous episode, Young Guns 2.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't hate Young Guns, but what movie was I watching? Oh, I think like Mobsters
Yes.
is what I was talking about in the context. And I like Mobsters. It's more fun to me than Young Guns for sure. But that'll be a fun one. I'll look forward to listening to that one.